I don't
All
think
right,
Zoom
brilliant.
does. All right.
Brilliant. Bro, it started. And oh, sorry, I didn't actually ask. How could I pronounce your name?
Oh, it's
Mayank?
just Mayank Kejriwal. Just the way it spells. Yeah.
Mayank. Okay, is there a silent K? Did you pronounce the K as well?
Yes. Yes, we do. Yeah.
Mayank. Okay. And by the way, you could just call me Donnie, yeah, because it says Donna on my name. Sometimes I am. That
All
might
right.
be. I just wanted to ask, so, Mike, where are you actually from? That's one of the first questions I would like to
So I'm
ask.
from Calcutta, India, which was the old British capital, and still it reminds me a little bit of London, or I should say, London reminded me of Calcutta when I was in London for the first time earlier this year. So that's where I'm
Mm,
from. Yeah.
that's interesting because it's similar to the architecture in terms of how things work there. Or why would you say it's
Oh no,
quite different?
the architecture I think definitely has British overtones. You can see it very clearly. I think you can see it in the other cities as well, but maybe not so much in the newer cities. But I think
Mm,
in Calcutta, you can see it. There's the Victoria Memorial, which is
mm,
has a sort of very British design in a way.
mm,
And just the schools, the clubs, the social
mm,
life. I think is still very. I think that as a Brit, if you go there, you would see the parallels very very clearly.
mm,
Um,
mm,
it's really interesting. When I went to London, I kind of felt almost like I was coming home in a way. But it's
mm,
here in America, it's very different, right? And so sometimes people think, well, this was also English occupied, and but here, like you see a very
mm,
clear divide. Like it's not
yeah.
you're not reminded at all of
Mm,
uh, the English culture, right? It's just they moved
right.
away from that. They formed their own culture completely, right? They've completely split. It's very American, the way
Mm,
that the US is. But no,
mm,
I think that in Calcutta, just the way that we spoke and the way
mm,
that the schooling was conducted, the
right.
examination system, the government
Ah,
system,
mm,
very reminiscent. Yeah.
mm. That's interesting because I've spoken to an individual who's also from India but lives in Canada, interestingly, and he said that the education system is quite familiar with what the English education system is like and what we study, like how we study, I suppose. And I was surprised, like
Yes.
why could that be, you know? So you probably familiar with A levels and that sort of thing as well?
I'm somewhat familiar. I think it's a little bit similar to what we used to have or what we have still, where I think what we have now is that at the end of the 10th grade, there's
Mm,
sort of this national level examination, and you get these grades, and I think those are like the similar to A levels
mm,
at the end of the 10th grade, and then there's another one at the end of the 12th grade. So,
mm,
but it's the I think that what is similar to the system is that you do get these nationally standardized grades. There are some minor differences depending on which school you're from, but it's very standard. Like there are like
mm,
two or three different national systems, and so
mm,
depending on the school that you're in, you're going to get a grade that is kind of calibrated to other people's grades across the country. Um,
mm.
and we call it board examinations. So there's
Ah,
a slight difference of terminology, but it's basically A levels. So what we call board examinations are A levels. Now, other than that, there's the usual stuff. The entrance examinations for the
mm,
engineering schools and law
mm,
school and so on. So I think those
mm,
are separate. Those are collegiate entrance examinations. The one thing we don't have, and my understanding is it's not there in the UK either, is sort of the standardized test system, right? Which is very
mm.
prevalent here in the US, for example, right? So here
Ah,
the school system is very heterogeneous. So the grades that you get
mm,
in school over here in the US will really depend on your school. If you get
mm,
an A in this school, that's not the same as getting an A in another school. It's not really
mm.
nationally standardized at all. Even
Right.
at the state level, it might not be standardized, and so they have a greater reliance here in the
Mm.
US on standardized testing like the SAT and the ACT. Um,
Ah,
and
yeah,
so that
yeah,
might
but
be the reason why. That's why in so many US universities, right, they really
mm,
do need those standardized tests. I know it's a little bit
yeah,
controversial. In some universities, we've gotten rid of it. So it's kind of right now
mm,
it's in flux. That should we have standardized testing? Should we not have it? It kind of depends on
mm,
which university you're looking at, which program, which level of study. But if you look
mm,
back, I would say like 4 years back, standardized tests was certainly all across the board. You would need to submit it pretty much. When I was applying for school, standardized
mm,
tests had to be submitted, the SAT or the ACT. Those were the two options.
yeah,
They're available internationally, as you know, right? You can take them anywhere pretty much.
mm,
Um, where there's an embassy or at least a US based, center, and
mm,
private companies offer it and so on. And it's kind of all over the world. It's the same test by and large.
mm,
And that is their attempt in a way to, I think it came out of a need to homogenize
mm,
because they don't have something like the A levels here in
yes,
America. So
yeah.
that's one of the many ways in which you can see the difference between
But
countries.
but A levels are internationally recognized as well. You can apply credits from, I believe, as far as I can tell, as a qualification internationally. I suppose that's quite interesting. But do
It
you, I don't know if
depends.
you. Oh,
It
really?
depends. It doesn't have the same, I would say, cachet as an SAT or an ACT or the
Ah,
GRE or the GMAT. If you apply for graduate school
mm,
here, they want a GRE pretty much. In many schools, they brought it back once they actually abolished it a year or two
mm,
ago. But then some schools, the MIT was actually one of the schools. They said we got rid of the
yes.
GRE or the one of them. Then they're like, no, we need it.
Why is that?
We're not. The GRE is a graduate record examination. It's a standardized test. They have standardized tests for everything over here. They have
Yes.
SAT and ACT here. It's accepted in Australia. It's accepted in many other
Mm,
places. I remember,
mm,
even in Singapore, many other places. They prefer that because that's an aptitude test. So, which
mm,
is kind of different from A levels. A levels are
mm,
like the board examinations in my country, where it's
mm,
really it's an examination, whereas these are aptitude tests. So,
mm,
aptitude tests are very different from
mm,
subject matter examinations. Um,
mm,
and it's very interesting. I actually think it's a very pragmatic system. I think
mm,
it's the that I think people got rid of it too quickly initially, out of sort of feeling that
mm,
maybe it's unfair to certain groups, and so on. But now they are starting to
mm,
realize that actually getting rid of standardized testing may not be such a good idea because it really is a
mm,
test of aptitude. It's an
mm,
equalizer in a way.
mm,
Um,
mm. But is it that's
so
you're referring to the GRE, right?
all of these tests,
All
whether
of
it's the
these. Oh,
graduate,
yes.
all of these are aptitude tests. Some
Mm,
are given after undergrad and some are done before undergrad. So
yes.
it depends on the level. But they have aptitude tests at all levels. If you apply to law school, you have to give the what they call the LSAT, I believe. That is for law
Mm,
school. So here you get into law after undergrad. So
mm,
I think that is very different from many other countries where like in India, you have a 5-year law degree where you get an
mm,
undergrad degree and a law degree at the same time, but you go after high school.
mm,
I think even
mm.
medical school is similar, but here you go into law school and to med school after
Yes.
undergrad. You need an undergrad degree basically to get into law school and med school. The major doesn't matter. You can be in any
Yes.
major, but you do have to give the LSAT for the med school. You have to give the MCAT. That is
Mm,
another aptitude test. Now there are requirements also. If you go to med school, you
yes.
do need to have the pre-med qualifications, and that is things
Mm,
like organic chemistry and so on. But it's very
mm,
pragmatic. I feel that over here they are much more. They don't really expect you to make decisions on all these things right
mm.
after
As in
high
here,
school.
do you mean in India? Would you say?
No,
Is it
here in the US.
in the US? Because you're
US.
based in the US currently. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And I did my
Okay.
undergrad here in the US. So as far as the
Mm,
educational system is concerned, although I do have British degrees as well. So that's kind of an
interesting.
interesting aside. So I've sort of kept up with that system. I can still handle that system. So
Mm. I actually wanted to go off on one of the actual aspects of well, to understand more of you as well in terms of, so the big question is to understand who you are today and where you are now. What shaped you? Do you think there was like this is like a a how should I say, what's the word for it?
you
I'm
don't
trying
have
to
to
find it.
mince words. Sorry.
What's that? Sorry. What's that? Sorry.
You don't have to mince words. You can say what's coming to your mind, and
Okay.
I like raw. I'm very uh,
Just
I have
flow.
hard edges. Put it that
Mm,
way.
just I see, I see. I need to learn more of that. I think I've seen you're a public speaker. I mean, I really need to craft my. I'm not. I'm working on that, but
You should go for it. And it will become more fun. So,
true, true. So I would just like to understand where you're today and what you're doing today. What do I need to know about you? from your background, from your upbringing, family, friends, what your interests were as growing up? That's a big loaded question. I'm curious what you have to say.
I know. Yeah. I mean, well, I think the first thing to know is that, I really come from a business community.
Mm,
When I think about where I'm coming from and who my family is today,
mm,
they're all, pretty much almost everyone. I would say not everyone per se. So there
mm,
are lawyers and doctors in our family as well, but they are the minority. So in a way, I'm in the
mm,
minority in my family because everyone else in my family, including in the new generation, my generation, but
mm.
in the previous generation, you would not find any exceptions.
Yes.
They were pretty much entrepreneurs, so they were small
Mm,
business owners, entrepreneurs.
mm,
Some did better than others, of course, as in any family. But it's a
mm,
business family. My parents were entrepreneurs. I
mm,
come from a family where the female figure is very strong, which was unusual
mm,
growing up. So my mom is an entrepreneur. She made a lot of money.
mm,
Very creative. And
mm,
she was right from the very beginning. We would see her
mm,
actually making a lot of decisions, going to the office. So for me, that
mm,
was normal, and it was actually it was almost jarring for me later on to see that
mm,
that's not actually the case in broader society. Even here in the U.S.,
mm,
you can feel the sexism sometimes, and
mm,
it's to me it makes no sense at all because
mm,
that is what I saw in the house, right? So
mm,
I saw very strong female figures making decisions, and you kind of
mm.
internalize that very quickly. Um,
Yes.
and so that it was already a little bit unusual. So growing
Mm,
up, it was kind of unusual compared to how the rest of the society was working, I would say.
mm,
And
mm,
we were kind of a quirky family. My
mm,
parents did not push us too hard academically. So this was I
mm,
went to a very academically competitive school.
mm,
So I would see some of my friends. Their parents were constantly pushing them,
mm,
shuttling them between different tutors, and there was this
mm,
heavy pressure. You have to be number one, you have to be number two, you have to get 100 on 100 in your
mm,
math exams. Especially as I got older, as I got into middle school and high school, the pressure ramped up. Some of
mm,
my friends are suffering PTSD from that already. Like they are
mm,
mentally not in a good place. Some of them
mm,
because they are still reeling from that pressure that they didn't
mm,
get the full childhood experience. And our case was not like that. My sister and I, we read a lot. We went to, we took classes in drama and music.
mm,
We had sort of a very, looking back, it was an amazing experience, I think,
mm.
growing up like that. Because on the one hand, the academics were very rigorous and we
Mm.
naturally felt that we had to do well. So we
Yes,
didn't
yeah.
feel like a pushing pressure, so I did very
Mm.
well academically, but that
Mm.
was natural. It wasn't, I used my
Intrinsic.
aptitude. I was not trying to game the system. I
Mm.
was just studying the way it was supposed to be done. So
Mm.
when I had a history exam, I was not cramming, I was reading.
Mm.
And when I got the question, I was not preparing, I was not anticipating that, oh, this question will show up because it showed up, 3 out of 5 times in the
Mm.
previous exam. And so
Mm.
my friends and my colleagues were actually cramming in a way. They were trying to anticipate that this is what will come, that is what will come. I
Mm.
still see that sometimes with some students, even at the graduate level. I tell
Mm.
them that's not why you're here.
Mm.
You have to study smart, but
Mm.
you have to study. It's not,
Mm.
you shouldn't cram. You shouldn't try
Mm.
to game the system. You have to
Mm.
rely on fundamentals to do
What
well.
what do you
So
define
you have
as
to study.
sorry, what do you define as studying smart, would you say?
I would say having a good grasp of fundamentals.
Yes.
And yeah, and so that's not necessarily the most efficient way. I think
Mm.
that it's kind of making a long-term investment. So if you
Yes.
get a very good grasp of fundamentals,
Yeah.
then you can solve any problem.
Mm.
But then you have to kind of focus on, okay, you're going to have 2 hours for an examination. So
Mm.
of course, as you're approaching the examination, you're going to be mindful of the fact that some topics are more important than others. Some questions, maybe it is a good idea to go and actually solve some previous year's papers
Mm.
and so on. I mean, I'm not saying that that's a wrong thing to do. Of course, you have to do all of those things, but I think
Yes.
that's the tactical side of it. That's
Mm.
not the strategic side of it. I think that strategically, you
Mm.
have to make sure that the fundamentals are very clear. And
Mm.
if you do that, then it's going to pay off in the long run and it will pay off in the examination. And you may not
Mm.
be number one. You may
Mm.
be number three. You might be number five. You might be in the
Mm.
top 5% rather than the top 1%.
Mm.
That's good enough because in the
Mm.
long run, you will kind of, be at the top. And that
Marathon.
is what happened. I didn't realize it
Mm.
then. But over time, I was able to do better
Mm,
than all of my colleagues. That is the
mm,
bottom line. I was the first one in my class to get a PhD. No one believed it.
mm,
Like even today's my friends were like, "We can't believe you were the one
mm,
who actually was the first to get a PhD, the first to become a professor, the first in our class." Given how competitive the class was,
mm,
that and people went on to do very well. Some of the other people who ranked very high, they went on to become doctors and lawyers and so on.
mm,
But I was not sort of in the running in a way. I was not like
mm,
number one, number two, but I was in the top 5%.
mm.
Um,
Can I ask
so
what
that
time?
is because of fundamentals.
Can I ask, is this in, you're saying this is in middle school, or if I'm getting correctly, or
High
what time?
school. In
High
middle school, I
school.
would say I was 10%. I was actually top 10% in middle school
Mm,
because in middle school, I was not so strongly focused on academics. I was
yes.
doing well. I wanted to do well, but I was not obsessed about being in the top 5%, top 1%. So I was actually reading a lot. When I
Mm,
look back to when I read the most, I think it was really middle school that formed my reading habits.
mm,
I read The Lord of the Rings when I was in sixth grade. I
mm,
still remember. And it was a very difficult book to read. I didn't understand much of what I was reading,
mm,
but I understood enough, and kind of I would look up the words. So when
mm,
I saw something I didn't understand, I would try to look up the words.
mm,
I focused a lot on really reading. I would
mm,
read these big books, and so
yes.
I kind of felt like I got comfortable with reading
Mm,
these big, difficult books. And also, I realize now, when I look back, I
mm,
also became comfortable with reading something that I didn't fully understand. I
yes.
was okay with not fully understanding, with understanding much of it, but also recognizing that I'm not understanding all of it, but that's
Mm,
not a reason to stop. That was a
mm,
reason to go on.
that's
So
really interesting. That's really interesting because a
yeah, so
lot of
I
the,
think that those habits
mm,
yeah.
it's education, and what I've learned from science and just studying engineering in general, that they're of course not going to give us everything all at once. And
Oh, no,
yeah,
very little. Yeah,
yes,
that's
yeah,
the true explanation. You got to figure it out.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. That's really interesting because as
right? I feel like a system does not set us up well for the right mix of
mm,
creativity and rigor.
mm,
So I
mm,
think all over the world, I don't think this problem has been solved yet. Anywhere in the world, in our K to 12 system,
mm,
where still don't reward. I would say that we don't have a systematic way of rewarding the right balance of creativity and
mm,
rigor. So there are some schools that are overly creative. They are like anything goes. Let
mm,
the student guide us, let the student pick up the habits they want, let the students do this and that and form their own curriculum.
mm,
And I'm like, no, that's not the right way to go. You do have to instill in them discipline and habits, and they have to know the math and science,
mm,
and they have to know how to read, and they have to know how to distill.
mm,
And so those are all fundamental skills, and that
mm,
will take some pain. But at the
mm,
same time, there are some schools where you cram a lot, and there's that side of it. And
mm,
so I think that, in my case, right, it wasn't really the school that taught me the right habits. It was really the combination of my school, which gave me rigor,
mm,
my own natural personality, which I realized that was competitive from the
mm,
very beginning.
mm,
And so I just did. I could not, I think personally, I would not have wanted to be outside of the top 10%. So I was
mm,
always there, top 5, top 10%.
mm,
Later on towards high school, it was top 3.
mm,
But it was very organic. It was not, out of fear. It was just natural competitiveness.
mm,
And then family, right? So family was entrepreneurial, so they didn't really care too much about. They didn't take academics too seriously.
mm,
So on the one hand, they were like, "Yeah, you have to do well, but we're not, we're not gonna, if you're like top 5 versus top 10, like even if I was top 20, I don't think they would have cared all that much.
mm,
I think they would have cared if I was, below average,
mm,
but I think as long as they would have been above average, they really didn't. They didn't push me
mm,
too hard. So I
mm,
think for some people that works well.
mm,
I think if you're naturally competitive and you're naturally intelligent and competitive and have the right friend circle and you're reading and you're doing the right things,
mm,
then it's actually good not to have too much pushiness on the
mm,
family side. And there
mm,
are others who kind of, meander, and may not pick up the discipline.
mm,
And so I think for them, maybe you do have to be a little bit pushy, but it's a
mm,
complicated issue.
Can I ask?
Like what's the right balance.
Can I just like what was the sort of the in terms of the goal and because this is I think a big question I sort of ask myself when because for example our school rewards academic achievement and a lot of the time I think I ask myself sometimes because I get lost in the feeling of am I actually in curiosity or is it actually just searching for the academic reward if that makes sense was to find that balance what sort of what was the motivation? You because it's I guess it could be argued if you're academically achieving high, you're also understanding the material and you're also. However, I mean, I've known someone who came from a background who did A levels, who achieved very well in their A levels. But when they got to university, the algorithm that they applied for understanding formulas and just to understand, they didn't truly understand what was underliningly maybe the knowledge. It was just, and then when they got to university, it was tested, and it's sort of the model of the algorithm kind of crumbled. I guess my question is, what is your thoughts on this?
I suffered the experience myself, so
Mm,
I completely believe you. So I'll tell you what happened. So I came to UIUC, University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, one
mm,
of the best WE programs in the US,
mm,
very highly and so I came there, I thought it would be, smooth sailing,
mm,
but I was a little bit rebellious, so I didn't take it for granted. So
mm,
in our very first semester in 2009,
mm,
we got into pairs. It was this engineering 101 where you had to build this robotic vehicle on like a breadboard,
mm,
basically like you had to wire things up and you had to like basically I still remember, I will always remember that.
mm,
You always remember the projects,
mm,
like you never forget them, even many years later on. That's the value of especially the where you're doing a project
mm,
that is challenging.
mm,
So this was basically like a robotic vehicle. There were wheels and there was like a breadboard, what we call a breadboard,
mm.
where you can like put in wires and hook it up to a battery, right? There may be some other term for it. We just call it a breadboard.
Yes,
So it's like a breadboard. It sits on top of the four wheels,
yes.
and you have to like wire logic. And so what we were trying to do was there was a sensor in front of the vehicle,
Mm,
and there was a tape on the table. Like
mm,
it was a long winding tape, and there were two or three sensors. And
mm,
the idea was that the sensor had to sense the black tape
mm,
and would have to send signals to the wheel so that the car could navigate around the tape.
mm,
And so this was actually challenging because you had to hook up the logic and you had to have transistors and all of that. It
mm,
was an amazing experience.
mm,
But wiring up that thing was not that easy, right? Because
mm,
we knew the theory. I think we all knew the theory, but actually doing it
mm.
was difficult.
Yes.
And so we did it in pairs. And so my partner on paper was another Indian,
Mm,
and on paper would have looked brilliant. He had passed the IIT exam. So in India, you have IIT, which is the Indian Institute of Technology. It's kind of like the MIT of India.
ah.
It's very difficult to get into an IIT. There's an entrance examination. You have to like be really good, like near
Mm,
perfect. The examinations are very difficult.
Is it?
And you take it after high school or during high school in your last year, very difficult. Like just to get
Mm,
in, there is an element of luck as well.
mm,
And people prepare for 2-3 years in like special tutoring sessions
yes.
to be able to stand a chance in the
Did it
examination.
test
So
you in
this guy,
maths and
he
physics? Sorry, did it test you in maths and physics?
math, physics, chemistry, I believe, are the three subjects.
Right,
Like they don't test biology.
right.
So I think it's math, physics, and chemistry for the IITs.
Interesting,
Yeah.
interesting.
And there may be another one, but I believe it's math, physics, chemistry. Those are the three
Okay.
that are definitely tested.
Mm,
And so we were really preparing for those. And this guy had done very well on that exam, but he also got a scholarship to come here. So he came here.
mm,
And that I think that was a smart decision, but he was totally inept.
mm,
Like he could not work with his hands.
yeah.
And he could not wire things up. He could not understand how to put the theory in
Mm,
practice. At the end, right, we almost reached the end of the semester, and I started
mm,
panicking, which I don't normally do, because we didn't have anything.
yeah.
We didn't have a product, and we were like 2 classes away from the demo.
Mm,
And so and so I'm really proud of what I did, which is I didn't, I just was like, okay, forget about what he's doing. I mean, it doesn't matter. We need to get this done. If we need to do it on our own, we will do it on our own, but we need to get this done. So I came in during the weekends. I spent like an entire 2 weeks on my own, completely alone in the lab. And we built the vehicle. So I built the vehicle and the vehicle worked. I got an A in the course. He got an A in the course. He might have gotten an A plus because he ended up probably doing better in the theory exam, and we both got the equal grade for the car. But I was really proud of myself for doing that, and I don't hold a grudge against him at all. Like I don't have any hard feelings towards him. I never did. I mean, that was the other thing that I learned, which is that I'm able to let things go. I understood that, I mean, I hope he understood. I don't know whether he understood or not. So my view was that, look, this is not the field that he's meant for.
mm,
And so if he understands that, he'll do well in life. And if he does not understand that and he just goes on examinations, at some point he's going to come up against the world.
mm,
And this is, and so I don't know if that ever happened, or we never kept in touch. Obviously, after that, we didn't exactly end up becoming friends. Even though I didn't have any hard
This
feelings,
is in
but
computer science undergrad course.
this was computer engineering.
Right. Oh,
So I
computer
was
engineering.
I was a computer engineering major, which is actually in the double department. It's a hybrid between double and computer science,
Ah.
but it's a different department, and that's what UIUC is very well known for, double and CE. So I was in computer engineering, which is much more hardware oriented.
Mm.
It's not, you have to actually build a machine. By the end of your senior year, your final year, you actually have to build an actual computer. So I really love that. I remember that team was a much more pleasant experience. There were four of us, and we really pulled together. And that was, there were many amazing experiences along the way, but there were also experiences where it wasn't so great to work on a team because the other person was inept. Um, so I've had this experience at least twice, and I would not take it back for anything because it taught me a lot
You say the moral.
about myself, also about working with other people.
Yeah.
It taught me that you cannot, and I try to implement that as a professor.
Yeah.
So right now, I have we have projects in our class that I teach,
Yeah.
and I am very careful. I try to do my bit to make sure that everyone is accountable.
Yes.
So there are mechanisms I use. I don't just leave it to that, oh yeah, they will get together in a group of 4 or 5 people, and then everything will be hunky dory, and everyone will be equally, contributing and so on. I don't do that. I actually have external mechanisms to make sure that they are actually being held accountable, that everyone has to pull together. Otherwise, it will not be a good project, first of all. And then there's also this chance that if you're a free rider and there are 3 people who are doing the work and one person is not doing the work, or vice versa, then I have a mechanism to make sure that is called out privately. So I try to do it. I don't know how successful it is, but it's difficult for us to know what's going on within individual groups.
Is there a
obviously,
feedback mechanism in at university?
yes, I learned that in business school. I learned it in business school, not in engineering school. I learned this in business school. So this is one of the things I got from business school. But what they would do is that they always had these class projects in every single class when I was doing an MBA at USC alongside. And one of the things they would do is that towards the end of the semester, there is this form that they would give to each student, and the form would be submitted individually. So it would not, no one else would know in your group what you're writing. But here's what they would do. So it's a simple table. They would tell you that, okay, you have to write down the name of every person in your group, including yourself, in that table. And then you have to allocate 100 points. So you're not grading everyone on 100. You have to divide 100 points among everyone in that table, including yourself. And so the way that they would do it is that, okay, if it's like 5 people in the group, on average, you would expect 20 points by definition, right? I mean, the average is equal to 20. But the question is that how far, is it like, okay, are most people between like 15 to 25? Is there someone who's like, everyone is giving this person a 5 points or 10 points as opposed to 20? Because everyone is kind of like, this person didn't do anything. So you would see the pattern. And then, of course, you have to decide what to do. I mean, I never faced a situation where that kind of thing happened. I think the professors like to avoid such situations. It's not, we don't want to actually, it's very unpleasant experience to call out someone for plagiarism, for cheating. I had the experience last year where there were 4 students in my class. There was one student who had done the homework, and then 3 other students, he had shown it to them and they copied it, and we caught them. And I had to have a conversation with all 4 of them. Ultimately, they all passed. I pushed them all down a grade. But they all passed, thankfully, with like C's and B minuses. But it was very unpleasant experience. I didn't like the experience at all, but it had to be done. And that's the policy. The university has such policies. It's not completely up to the professor. They have to actually take action when they find those things. So, when my view is that if I see a form or set of forms where there's very clear skew that someone didn't do something, and everyone in the group is pointing towards that, then I will have to take some action. I've never been in that position yet, in that particular case. But if I see that, I will not just let it fly. I will take some action. Whether that means that I talk to that person, and there are not obscure, but there are discrete ways of making sure that you then follow up. For example, right, it could be that you reach out to all the group members privately and say that, hey, I need to know, this is like a random exercise, or there was skew in your
Mm.
forms, but I won't say against whom or for whom, but I need to know who did what.
Mm.
So can I get a statement from each one of you
Yeah.
individually that who did what,
Yeah.
right, on the project?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's interesting.
that brings out very
Mm.
clearly, right, what's happening. I mean, that would make it very clear. And then we call out the person who is who was called out as not doing
Mm.
anything, right? And ask them, well, you didn't do
Yeah.
anything, or what exactly did you do in the project? I need
Mm.
to ask you.
Mm.
And if you didn't, then you don't get the project grade, or your
Mm.
project grade needs to be
You know,
discounted. So
that's
it takes more work on
mm.
my side, but I'm very mindful
Yeah.
of this because I was influenced by my experience.
Yes.
And I think everyone has experienced it, but they let it go by.
Mm.
And they're like, well, that was everyone goes through that. It's in the past, and all of that.
Mm.
But I think that it doesn't behoove our educational
Mm.
system to be like that. I think that everyone does need to be accountable, and as educators, I think that we do need to tell
Mm.
people, students, that there is accountability. I don't think we do any favors to
Mm.
them by shielding them from accountability
Yes.
till they are in the real world,
Yes.
and then suddenly they discover that is accountability.
Mm.
That's not
That's
the
that's
way that
really
things should
interesting. I think
go.
that experience is that sums up, when we all how the fairness of it to distribute the workload between, because it tends to be someone takes their workload as one individual and everyone else can slack off because and there's no accountability system for that. That's really interesting, and that's a really interesting way to go about it. Actually, I haven't experienced that in my education actually, to have that accountability system, which would be, I think, quite useful, because it can fall
Yes.
through the gap because not the lecturers won't maybe check, but yeah, I haven't seen it in uni yet just yet. But actually,
Because the issue
what's that?
is the problem, the assumption that is
Mm.
incorrect, I think, in the current systems, pretty much everywhere,
Yeah.
is that if there is a problem, the group has a problem, that either they will self-regulate or they will go and tell the
Yes.
professor. But that's not what practice
Yeah.
shows. The evidence shows that people like to avoid unpleasant situations.
Yeah.
And so I'm very pragmatic, and the pragmatism actually comes from my
Mm.
family. So, you asked about the background, and I think my pragmatism, I'm not an
Mm.
idealist. I'm not a cynic
Mm.
either, so I'm very optimistic. I'm a futurist,
Mm. How would
actually.
you define?
So I'm optimistic.
How would you define a futurist?
Huh?
How would you define a futurist? Sorry.
So I'm a Star Trek kid. So Star Trek really influenced
Mm.
me, and that's probably what got me into science.
Mm.
That is the number one reason why I felt influenced to go into science.
Yes.
And if you look at Star Trek, right, it's an idealistic kind of society. It's
Mm.
kind of a utopian society. I don't believe in that part of it as
Mm.
strongly. But it does, I think the part about Star Trek that a lot of people miss
Mm.
is this implicit thing that if you have adequate technology,
Mm.
that at some point we would have the technology. And in Star Trek, it's actually the replicator. So
Mm.
if you follow the Star Trek series, it's the replicator, which you see
Mm.
everywhere, pretty much all the series, except maybe one of them.
Mhm.
And the replicator is this thing that cannot make living things,
Yes.
but it can make food, it can make water, it can make all kinds of things. It can make weapons. There are episodes where it makes weapons, and that's an ethical dilemma. But the point is that energy is solved in Star Trek
Mm.
because they have figured out basically a kind of nuclear fusion like
Mm.
technology. So I do believe that some technology like
Mm.
that, it may not be nuclear fusion, it may be nuclear
Mm.
fusion, but some technology that will basically give us, limitless energy
Mm.
for, and energy really is what underlies civilization.
Mm.
It turns out, I mean, of course, you don't want dirty
Yeah.
energy. So it's not, when I say energy underlies civilization, I'm not, saying that we should get energy at all
Yeah.
costs. I'm just saying that in order to advance, in order to have
Yeah.
prosperity, you do need energy. The source of the energy, of course, is a big area of contention, and that's what our time is dealing with climate
Mm.
change. But I'm a futurist in the sense that I do believe a day will
Mm.
come, and there may be pain points along the
Mm.
way, and we don't know what the answer would
Mm.
be. Maybe it would be, I personally believe very strongly in innovation.
Mm.
I think that there would be a very strong innovation cycle where nuclear fusion and people are working on it, or some technology like nuclear fusion or solar energy in
Mm.
space, or whatever it is, we would get a source of near limitless energy for our
Mm.
purposes down the line.
Mm.
And that, really underlies prosperity. I mean, if you have, that's what Star Trek showed, that once you have the right technology
Mm.
and the right energy, concepts like money become
Mm.
meaningless.
Mm.
Because what really is money? Like it's kind of like, people argue that we should have universal basic income and so on.
Mm.
But the problem is that it's still a zero-sum
Mm.
game. When you have a world with finite
Mm.
resources and finite
Yeah.
energy, the bottom line is you need some way to do resource allocation, and you need some way to divide up the resources, and it could be very unfair.
Mm.
And again, I'm just saying what needs to be done, not that the way it
Really
is
interesting. Yeah.
done is good or
Mm.
bad. I'm just saying that when you have limited resources and lots of people, then there has to be some way of dividing the
mm,
resources, and it could be very inequitable, it could be very unfair, and we do need to change those things, of
mm,
course. But the bottom line is there are finite resources. We cannot change that right
mm,
now, but technology will change that.
mm,
So if technology changes that, then the problem becomes moot, because if everyone has
mm,
enough, then all these things we are talking about
mm,
now, universal basic
yeah,
income, that will naturally
mm,
emerge. Because if you have a replicator in your
mm,
house, right, and you have a place to live and there's a replicator in your
mm,
house, you can make food and
mm,
water. And if you have limitless sources of energy, if you're getting energy from the
mm,
sun, and there's a very efficient way to convert all the energy you
mm,
need, then I mean you have everything you
mm,
need, right? That is UBI right over
mm,
there. Like you would not really need money
mm,
anymore, because you get everything you want that you need to live a good
mm,
life. And if education, all these
mm,
things, right? If they all become universal
mm,
goods, which they really
mm,
are in spirit. But the problem is we have finite
mm,
resources, so we can't make them free and available for all. I mean, that's kind of a socialist
mm,
meme. But the reason why socialism perhaps didn't work as well is because they kind of ignored,
mm,
or they weren't fully, they couldn't reconcile the finite resource
mm,
allocation part of it. I
okay.
am saying that, I am more of a Star Trek kind of
Mm,
guy, in the sense that I think that once we have all of the technology, and I do
mm,
think there will be lots of problems
yeah.
along the way. I think there's a very real danger that even if that technology comes to
Mm,
fruition, some people will have access to it and many people will
mm,
not. And the same problem we see with money might
mm,
occur with those kind of technologies. So we do have to prevent against
yes.
that as good citizens. But at some point, everyone will have access to those technologies. We've seen it time and again. Everyone has access to the
Yeah.
internet. Everyone has access to the smartphone by and
Mm,
large.
eventually.
I mean, technology ultimately has become
Mm,
democratic. You can't shield people from technology. It has an influence where it
mm,
spreads and it becomes cheaper. It's
mm.
deflationary. In economic terms, we say that technology is
Does that
deflationary.
mean? Sorry.
Um,
Deflationary.
so deflationary over here means that as technology
Yeah.
advances, it becomes
Right.
cheaper, and because of technology, other things become cheaper.
Right.
So, for example, if you think about it, communication
Mm,
services, if you had to place a phone
mm,
call to another country, that would have cost a lot of
mm,
money back in the day. If you controlled for
mm,
inflation, it would cost even more money. Like if you go back and you ask, okay, if I needed to make a phone
mm.
call, I mean, just look at 7 years
Yeah.
ago, right? Like 5, 7 years ago. Like right now, when I go to a different country, I get free internet.
Mm,
I still remember that was not the case when I used to travel even 4 years ago.
mm,
Like even in 2016 or 17, you would land in a country and you would have to switch off cellular,
mm,
or you would have to get another plan, or sometimes you would have to buy another SIM card,
mm,
because if you didn't, or you had to opt
mm,
in, and you still see this on cruise
mm.
ships, by the way. So when you go to a cruise ship, right, if you want to use the internet, it costs a lot of money. It's like $1 per minute or something that's like
Is it because
insane.
it's
Like you can't.
is it driven by the usage? The more usage from different individuals.
Right. My point is, it used to be very
Yeah.
expensive. Like if you access the internet in abroad, it was very
Mm,
expensive. If you do it now in cruise ships, it's very
yeah.
expensive. So it was used to be very expensive, and now, right? Like most of the phone companies, they just offer it for
Mm,
free. They like, if you, it's like T-Mobile, AT&T. I think everywhere in the world pretty much, but certainly in the
yeah.
US, if you land in like 180 countries, as long as you have a monthly
Mm,
subscription, which you normally would, right, to a phone
mm,
service, it's like, yeah, we have agreements with all these providers. When I land in the UK, I can use the internet for free. It's not. It works on my phone. It works just
mm,
as fast as when I'm here on the streets of
mm,
LA. It's the same strength connection. I can use maps. I mean, it's like going
mm.
to a
Where
different
are you based right now,
neighborhood.
by the way?
It's like the
You
world.
based in LA? Where are you based
Huh?
right now? Sorry.
Based in
Based in
LA.
LA. Okay.
Yeah, I'm based in
Okay.
LA.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's free, right? It's gone from $1 a
Yeah.
minute or $1 per MB or something
Yeah.
like that to like free.
Mm,
So that's
yeah.
deflationary, right? So basically, that particular service has become
Yes.
free. The price has gone to
Mm,
zero because of technology, and we see that with
mm,
many things. With many things, your smartphone is as powerful as computers from like 8 years
mm,
ago, 10 years ago,
mm,
probably. Um, it's deflationary, right?
mm.
It's not, when you look at the size, the quality, the number of years it
Yes.
lasts. Um, when you control for quality, and there are ways to do that in
Mm,
economics, to control the price, to show what the price is after controlling for
mm,
quality. Technology is
mm.
deflationary. So this is kind of what the Star Trek is saying. Star Trek is saying that when the replicator gets invented, and we are on our way to
Yeah.
inventing that, the 3D printer, the MIT was working on a machine where you could make food
Mm,
inside. There are greenhouses where you can control the light and water. It's a matter of time
mm,
before it scales, and you can order a box where you can grow your own food. It's a matter of time before everyone has solar
mm,
panels, or there's even a company here where I've
mm,
invested that can build a windmill, a small windmill in your
mm,
backyard, and so you can even get wind power. It's still in the early
mm,
stages. It's a startup, but my point is, 20 years,
yeah,
30 years, 50 years down the line, we will have personal sources of
mm,
energy. Um, we will basically technology will solve a lot of
mm,
these problems. So that is really my inspiration in a
mm,
way for coming into science and technology and engineering. That it's I think that I'm a futurist.
mm,
At heart, I'm
mm,
optimistic. I'm a futurist, but I have no illusions about human
yes,
nature. So I really believe in human beings. I believe in my students. I believe in the power of human capacity and
mm,
innovation. But I am not under any illusions. What I would call a Rousseauist
mm,
illusion. So Rousseau, Jean Jacques Rousseau, the
mm,
philosopher, he believed that human beings are born good, and that society corrupts human beings, and that actually in our natural state we are very
mm,
good. And then on the other hand, you have the British philosopher, right,
mm,
Hobbes. I forget his first name, but Hobbes, his last one, a very famous
mm,
philosopher, and I believe he's from the
mm,
UK. And he believed in that actually it's society that
mm,
civilizes us, and that we are actually wild and untamed and uncivilized and immoral
mm,
even in a natural state, and it's actually society and the monarchy, for example, and other things. I mean, basically
mm,
institutions that actually make us
yes,
civilized. And so, it depends. It's like these two philosophies are still very prevalent. So sometimes when you read in the news, you can actually see strains of Rousseauist or
mm,
Hobbesian
right,
thinking. And so what I am trying to say is that I am not a
mm,
Rousseauist, but at the same time, I also
mm,
I do believe in individual freedoms, but I think that I believe in technology. So I am not a Hobbesian, I'm not a Rousseauist.
mm,
I think that the Hobbes was more on the right
mm.
side, but I think that during that era in the 1700s
1700s.
and
I was just
1800s,
gonna ask when.
they didn't have
Mm,
they didn't see
mm,
technology as a
mm,
force. And I think that we are seeing technology as a very real force. They saw society as a force, but I think society was the
yeah,
beginning, but I think technology is the
yeah.
apex. And so I believe in
Yeah, I was
technology.
well, on the topic
Yeah.
of technology, I actually wanted to just ask, just to backtrack on the computer science, I suppose. Why computer engineering in that general? Where did it come from? I suppose when you found out this is what I want to do.
It wasn't very. I wouldn't say that it was very planned. I wouldn't say that it was something that I was very bent on
Mm,
doing. In fact, computer science was not my strongest subject in
mm,
school. I would say that math and physics were the strongest subjects. And so I got a dual degree at UIUC. I got a degree in both computer engineering and engineering
yeah.
physics. So it was a dual degree. And I took a lot of physics classes. I took quantum mechanics, upper level quantum
Mm,
mechanics, and all of that, which computer engineers don't have to do. I'm very happy I did, because I feel like now if I want to do research in quantum
mm,
computing, it's kind of funny how something you learn in 2011 can come back in
mm,
2022. That I can actually go back and just read my old quantum textbook. I still have that, and I sort of know a little bit about how that works. Of course, I need to read a lot more if I ever want to go into
yes, yeah.
that. But it's not enough to just take an upper level undergrad course 10 years ago. But at least I know kind of what that
Mm,
is, right? And so I can get back to
mm,
it. I'm not intimidated by it. So I would say physics and math were really where my strong suits were, and what I thought I would do. And engineering, I would have been happy with mechanical engineering. Thank God I didn't go
mm,
into that, because I feel like my mechanical aptitude is not as high as my computational
mm,
aptitude. I think my mechanical aptitude is very low
mm.
actually. So it was a matter of luck that I was able to, lean into my strengths by
Why do
accident.
you
It was
say
an
that?
accident.
Why
I
do you
went
say
into
that it's not one of your strengths? Did you say mechanic was not one of your? Would you say it's?
I cannot work. I've seen it so many times, and this is why you have to recognize your
Yeah.
own strengths. I just can't put things together. My brain works
Mm,
differently. Like if you give me like something where you have to put things together, I can't do
mm,
it. Like there are young children who can do it better than I
mm,
can. If you show me a radio in a car with all those buttons, I don't know what to
mm,
press. Like it's like this was something I knew from way back. Even in high school, I remember I would have these
mm,
problems. But for some reason, right, I didn't recognize that weakness, and so I've been lucky in a way that I didn't end up going into
mm,
mechanical engineering. I didn't go end up going into, let's say,
mm,
aerospace engineering. I don't think that those things I would have been successful. I think I would have found a way to
mm,
make it work. I think I would have found a way to become strong, but I don't have natural talent in that. And I do think that there is something to be said for natural talent and
Mm,
aptitude. I think everyone has natural talents and aptitudes, and they have to
mm,
recognize those. And sometimes that, it's not inborn. I'm not saying that that is
mm,
inborn. It might be for some people. I mean, I've heard that musically, for example, there may be something that you're born with it, and you just kind of pick it up very quickly, or it might be very early upbringing. There are 3 year olds that I'm sure you've seen on YouTube who can play the piano better than I can. And I learned to play when I was like 9 or 10 years old. I can play the piano, but I cannot, no matter what I do, I cannot play like some 3 and 4 year olds can. I have that kind of talent. I just don't have that aptitude. Whether that is because I was not born with it or because I didn't pick it up early enough is something that is a matter for debate. But my point here is that certainly there comes a point in your life where you had your experiences, you had your childhood experiences, you've made your friends, you've learned certain things, you've read certain things, and you have to recognize your
yes.
strengths. You have to recognize what you're good at, what you want to be good at, what you want to push on. For me, this was more abstract thinking. It was writing. I'm a very strong writer. I've always been. When I look back, I was writing books when I was very early on. None of them got published, of course, the stuff that I wrote at the age of 14. But I wrote an entire novel when I was
Mm.
14 years old. Um, One of my friends still has a copy of that. I told him I don't have a copy of it. He's like, no, you printed it out. You printed two or three
What
of
is it
those,
about?
and you actually gave one to me.
Mm,
So
what is it about?
yeah, I still have the digital version, by the way. I was looking it up, and then, yeah, I have the digital version. Thank
Mm,
God, still from back in the day. But he has the printed version. I don't have a printed copy of my
mm,
own book that I wrote, back in 14. But I actually had it printed out and I had it
mm,
bound, and I gave him a copy. And so we're still very
mm,
close. My friend and I from high school, and so he still had that. You're like, oh yeah, and then I didn't believe him. I was like, no, you're just
mm,
kidding. You're like, no, let me show it to you. And then he pulled it out from the
mm,
I was kind of, I was like, oh my, wow, you're like treating my work with more respect than I
mm.
do.
What is it
So,
about, sorry? What is it? What did you write about
uh,
at the age of 14? What was your interest?
it was kind of like, I think the book that now when I look back, I think what I was trying to write was sort of a Catcher in the
Mm,
Rye kind of story. So it's kind of a coming of
mm,
age, and kind of
mm,
novel, written from a first person
mm,
standpoint, fictional, but kind of a coming of age novel of a young sort of male teenager, and that's where I was. And I'm very curious. One of these days, I do want to go back and reread what I wrote. I'm sure it will be very cringeworthy, but I suspect that there will be paragraphs in
mm,
there that will have raw truth. And I think that that's where writing, good writing, especially of fictional nature, I think needs to have raw truth in it to be meaningful, to strike a chord. And I suspect that there will be paragraphs in there that will take me aback. Where I will read it, I can't believe I wrote that, but that is so true and it's so raw and it's original. And maybe I can
yeah.
salvage. I don't know. Um, but it's not on top of my list. There are other things that are
Right.
that are more that interest me more. But something that I do, it's at the back of my mind.
That's interesting when you
So
mentioned
yeah,
Star Trek, just to backtrack a little again. Because I've seen this a couple of times actually. My peers who are interested in engineering actually are coming from a background of reading a lot of actually fiction. And that's quite interesting.
yes.
And when you mentioned Star Trek, I wasn't a Star Trek, but I was more into Star Wars. I don't know if that was it, because I seen there's a debate with that.
Yeah,
There's a debate with the Star Trek.
I haven't seen a single Star Wars movie, but that's not because I'm
Oh,
against
okay.
it or anything. I just haven't gotten around to it. So,
Interesting.
no, but I think I never read science fiction. When I look back, I read a lot of like a lot of fantasy. Like Harry Potter, still a huge
Mm,
fan. I read Lord of the Rings and all
mm,
those things. Read Ayn Rand and the usual
mm,
non-fiction, fiction,
mm,
philosophical novels. I feel like I can write. I have a feeling that my strength is in philosophical novel. If I ever write a novel, it would probably be a
yeah.
philosophical novel that I would want to write. Um, and but I never read science fiction till I was doing my
Interesting.
PhD, and then I read Arthur C.
What did you read,
Clarke.
sorry?
And drama. I read
I
Rendezvous
haven't
with
read.
Rama, and that I still it was so amazing. I mean, reading Rendezvous with Rama while listening to futuristic ambient
Ah,
music.
interesting.
Um, it's like you remember the moments. Like it's just a
Mm,
moment, but that feeling
mm,
that you get, you have to hold on to
mm,
the feeling because those feelings don't. You have to hold on to
mm.
those feelings. So that feeling when I was listening to, like, the pulsating, ambient, futuristic
Mm,
music, and I remember it was night, and I was in my
yeah.
studio, and I was just lying on my bed, and I was reading Rendezvous with
Mm,
Rama, and I mean, it was just I can remember
mm,
the atmosphere in my
mm,
mind. I can remember the atmosphere in my mind. I felt I was in there. I was in that spaceship. I don't remember the
mm,
story anymore, but I do know that the Rendezvous with Rama was this kind of the space. I mean, no one really knew if it was a vehicle or what
mm,
it was. I mean, that was kind of the mystery. That there was this
yeah.
interstellar object that came into the solar system or wherever, right? And then
Mm,
it was this centrifugal
yeah.
cylinder, right? And then they went inside, and they kind of and all of that. But
Mm,
it's kind of like that process of exploring that
mm,
vehicle, or that whatever that
yes.
thing, and listening to, and you could feel the cyberpunk. And then I
Mm,
also read, I read some other books, probably upper late level
mm,
undergrad. I read Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, because I was very interested in the
mm,
metaverse. So this was like pre-metaverse, obviously, but I read
yeah.
Snow Crash because there was this cartoon series that I used to watch when I was
Yeah.
growing up, that where there was a very strong, what we now would call, the
Mm,
metaverse. So there was this virtual reality
mm,
element, that in that series, what they would do, it was kind of like Johnny Quest.
mm,
It was like the real adventure of
yeah.
Johnny Quest, which was being shown on Cartoon
Right.
Network. And it wasn't like the original Johnny Quest. It was the one where they invented virtual reality, and you would put on a
Mm,
headset and go into this metaverse, which was called Quest
interesting.
World. And it was kind of very experimental. I think when you look at it now, it's kind of like the graphics are
Mm,
not great, but I still remember, it just totally bowled me over. I was just so super
yes.
influenced by
Yeah.
that, by the way that they showed the metaverse. And I still think it's very real. I think that the way they showed the metaverse is uncannily. I mean, the thing that he
Yeah.
put on his head looks like the Oculus Quest
Mm,
2. It's uncannily like the Oculus Quest 2. It's like 15 years
mm,
earlier.
that's fascinating.
Um,
Mm,
and when you read Neil Stephen's Snow Crash with the avatars and
mm,
so on, it's very reminiscent of what they are talking about now. Now, Snow Crash was published in the
mm,
80s. So when you actually read it with the avatars, where people put on, I don't know if it was a headset or what it was, but basically you would be paying for
yeah.
the avatar. That if you wanted a very good avatar, you would either have to be like a very good programmer
Mm,
or a hacker, or you would have to pay for that. Now, this was in the
yeah.
1980s, and now we are in an era where
Yeah.
that's happening, right? Like, people are buying properties in the
Mm.
metaverse. People are paying for Gucci bags
Wait,
in the
seriously, I don't know
metaverse.
actually about that.
Um,
I don't know about there's a whole
oh yes,
interesting. Are you involved with?
people are paying for Gucci
It seems like something
bags.
so underground.
Yes.
Something that's like a club that I'm not invited to, I think.
Are buying real estate in the metaverse. I considered it myself once, but I decided
Mm,
it's too early. So I didn't get into NFTs. I'm not a believer in NFTs in their
mm,
current form. I think that there's a lot of crap in
mm,
NFT world. I think that it needs to the garbage needs to be flushed out before we will
mm,
be ready with true NFTs. But I think as it will be here. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that NFTs will be here. I just think that right now it's too early to invest
mm,
in NFTs. So, but I do invest. I invest in
mm,
crypto. I didn't invest early in crypto because I didn't
yeah.
believe in it. So I'm very strong. I'm very strong minded about. I don't believe in
Mm,
FOMO. I'm very strong minded about. I think that FOMO is a lack of
mm,
confidence. I think that when people give into FOMO, fear of missing out, I think that it's a sign of
mm,
lack of confidence in your own
mm,
fundamentals. Because the fundamentals are not subject to
mm,
FOMO. If you have strong fundamental beliefs, you should
mm,
invest in it, and you should invest in yourself. You should
mm,
do what you're doing, and it will go up and down. But in
mm,
the long run, you'll win
mm.
if you're right. So
Interesting.
I don't believe
That's
in
interesting.
FOMO. I don't. I'm not perturbed by market movements at
Mm,
all. So I invest in it for the long term. So I've been in Bitcoin. My Bitcoin holdings went up by
mm,
50%. Now they're down by
mm,
80%. But I don't feel good or bad about it
mm,
either way. Like,
mm,
literally, I'm still in it. I haven't sold. I'm
mm.
buying more. So it's because I do believe that in 10 years, 20
You
years,
believe
50
currency?
years, it's going to be really big.
Yeah.
It would be, and that's okay. It's 5%, 10% of my
Mm,
portfolio. What's the worst that will happen? I'll lose 5% of my
mm,
portfolio here, but then I'll probably
mm,
gain somewhere else. So
mm,
that's the way life works. It's not about
mm,
winning everywhere. You have to kind of be confident about your strategy and realize that there are
mm,
things you don't know, and there are things you have no
mm,
control over. And so it takes confidence, I think, to
mm,
think like that. It's there's a very big ocean between, it's not a thin line. There's an ocean between confidence and
Yeah.
overconfidence. It's not a thin line. I think they are two
Yeah.
completely different things.
Mm.
And superficially, they kind of
Mm.
look a little bit similar. But the truth is that confident people, they don't first of
Mm.
all talk a lot about, I'm investing in this, my portfolio gained this, and I got this and I got that. So they don't, they can promote when they want to, but they have a
Mm.
utilitarian view. So they like, well, if I'm promoting, there's a reason why I'm promoting. It's not to convince other people that I made the right decision. It's when you actually hear people saying, well, you need to do this, you need to buy this, you need to do that. You kind of have to understand that they're really trying, by convincing you, they're trying to convince
Mm.
themselves. And you have to
Mm.
recognize that, and
Mm.
so, I didn't get into the cryptocurrency early on because I
Yeah.
wasn't convinced. And then as I started doing more and more, I
Yeah.
started getting convinced,
Yeah.
but it took a
Yeah.
while
But it was
for me to
important.
get convinced. When I was
But it's
convinced,
important for you to decide, though. It was important
yeah,
for you to make the decision, and ultimately, it's not the formula that was driving you. It was that's interesting. That is because
no,
I think a lot of, including myself, actually, young people, are really actually uncertain because of the paradox of choice. I think I mentioned this in one of the last episodes of there are so many options, to choose from, and to determine what is it that you're interested in, and what is it that you want to follow.
yeah. I still have
What's
that
that? Sorry?
problem, by the way. So intellectually, I still
Yeah.
suffer from that
Oh,
problem.
okay.
So
Right.
it doesn't running in all
Yeah.
different directions, so it's not. But it's a work in
Yes.
progress. But I've come to see that as
Yeah.
a strength. I've come to see that as a part of my
Yes.
way of doing things. Whereas early on, I was like, I was trying to be like, no, I need to give all my energy to everything, or I need to choose one thing or two things. And now I'm like, no, there is a
Mm.
way forward, but you have to. It's a
Yeah.
difficult journey, but you should not give
Mm.
up who you are. You really have to, if you are interested in different things, there is a way to bring them together. You have to remember that once, this is where history is
Mm.
very important. I think that if you read history, you get a broader perspective on these things. All these
Yeah.
specializations, computer science and physics, and within computer science, you have
Mm.
artificial intelligence, you have within artificial intelligence, you have natural
Mm.
language processing, you have computer vision, you have
Mm.
robotics, you have this and that. We are living in an over
Yeah.
specialized world. Now, I understand that there is some
Mm.
pragmatism to that. I'm not saying that we remove all categories, we
Mm.
remove all labels. So there is some value to
Yeah.
specialization. But we also have to recognize that these specializations are not
Yeah.
natural.
Yeah.
They are human
Yeah.
invented. And there is a very nebulous side to
Mm.
it, which is a power, the side that, okay, this is my camp. I am going to invent a name
Yeah.
for this field, and then I'm going to
Yeah.
argue around this field, and I'm going to exclude. So, if you're a physicist, then you can't work in this because
Yeah.
you're a physicist. So simply by the virtue of naming something,
Yeah.
you're walling it off. This
Yes.
happens a lot.
I can agree.
So
And actually, with the
job
yeah.
positions in academia, it is
Yeah.
all too prevalent. But in job positions, right, like this person has this position and
Yeah.
working in this department, and so on and so forth. So you're not working in this department, or your title is
Yes.
not saying this, even though you're fully
Yeah.
capable of working on that. But that's
Yeah.
not in your title.
Mm.
That's not in your degree.
Yeah.
That's not your division. So you
Mm.
can't work on that. So the part of naming, like just the act of
Mm.
naming something, is in a way
Yeah.
exclusionary at times. And so we have to recognize that this is not, specialization and over specialization are, as much as they have some
Mm.
utilitarian function, they also have um, a bureaucratic and sort of this, sort of power grabbing,
Mm.
exclusionary, bureaucratic role slash,
Mm.
aspect
Can
to
we just
them.
break that down?
So
Sorry.
when you
Sorry.
start seeing,
I choose break that down. Could you say that again? Bureaucracy. Can you just break that down for me, at least, to understand what you mean by that exactly?
so it's bureaucratic because in the real world, we
Yeah.
have hierarchies, we
Yeah.
have job roles, we have
Yeah.
divisions. It's not
Right.
free flowing, right? It's the organization, even today, even startups, even organizations that claim
Mm.
to be very nimble, they do
Mm.
have all these titles, they
Mm.
do have functions, they do have. So that is kind of one way of walling off, right? So you're naming all these things and you're listing all these things, and you have these titles and divisions and so on, and then the
Mm.
hierarchy on top of that. And so there's a very natural
Mm.
bureaucracy that sort of emerges. and you have to navigate the bureaucracy. You can't do this or that because it goes against policy, or it's not, you know, it's not
Yeah.
your job function. It's not your role. It's not in your title. It's not this or that. So that is purely a
Mm.
bureaucratic function. It's a function of bureaucracy. It happens everywhere. One of the interesting things that you might want to know is that when you look at all the great empires, the Roman Empire, the before that, the what happened was they didn't, the reason. Hello.
Hello, could you hear me? Sorry.
Yes. Oh yeah. I think I stopped talking because I figured we were cut. So,
Yeah, I just couldn't respond. My headphones ran out, so I just plugged it in. Sorry about that. You were talking about.
no worries. We're not yet in the infinite energy space, so we do have to work with what we have. So, um, yeah. No, I was saying that when you actually
Yeah.
look at history, right, like the Roman Empire and some of these
Yes.
other empires, it turns out that there's a very real case to be made that the reason why these empires became so weak over time.
Mm.
Well, and ancient Egypt is another one. So Egypt, the Roman Empire,
Mm.
they became the way they did because of bureaucracy. There was an
Mm.
implosion. It wasn't really.
Mm.
They became so bureaucratic. There was so much, of this. What was going on there with over specialization,
Mm.
territory marking,
Mm.
narrowing of roles and functions that
Mm.
basically, the tax code is another one, right? Tax codes are very
Mm.
complicated all over the world,
What
right?
is
That's
that?
a
Sorry,
specific sign.
I haven't heard
Huh?
that term. What is tax codes? You say
No,
codes?
tax codes, the laws
Tax
that govern
codes. Oh, tax
taxation.
codes.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Very complicated. In most places
Right.
in the world, there are loopholes and this and that, and it's not supposed to be like that, right? So
Mm.
the
Mm.
thing is that when that happens, you can sort of sense that the writing is on the wall,
Mm.
unless the bureaucracy simplifies.
Mm.
So what I'm
Mm.
saying is that when you have these kind of over specializations, that is one of the hallmarks of
Yes.
bureaucracy, and
Yes.
it almost make you think that if you're not over specialized, there's something wrong with you, that you're not doing things
Mm.
the right way. That
Yeah.
is the implication, right? And
Mm.
you can see how nebulous that is. It's kind of given to you as ground truth without any
Mm.
argument. You're just told
Mm.
that from the very beginning, and you see it all around you, and so you kind of feel like that must be true, right? Like we never question that.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Mm.
no one really questions that. The only way you do question that is if you go back and look at what used to be.
Yeah.
That has to be your guide, not the presentism of what's
Mm.
happening now, but you have to go and look at the long arch of what
Mm.
happened before, and you learn from those.
100%. One hundred
Yeah.
percent.
So
100%. Actually, this is a big thing for me to understand as well in engineering education as well. So I came from a what we call college here, 16 to 18. I went to a practical course in BTech. It's called a BTech, but it's a general engineering course. So we did some mechanical, we did some software, and we did some electrical and electronics sort of thing. And once I got to uni, actually, before I actually applied for electrical engineering, I hoped to do robotics engineering. I didn't have the grades for that, but I had the grades for electrical engineering, which is interesting because it incorporates mechanical software, as you know, and electrical. So it's, I guess, more difficult.
well, I
But
mean, practical experience,
what's that?
right? I mean,
Sorry.
you have practical training, which
Yeah,
we
more practical.
underestimate in our educational system. That is the kind of thing we underestimate, which drives me nuts.
Mm,
I mean, when I
mm,
when I hire PhD students,
yeah,
I'm so unconvinced by the system that I
yeah.
can't. I have a very hard time actually, hiring a student if I don't know them beforehand. So when I actually hire
Mm,
a PhD student, I tend to hire from the master's students who are working in my group because I can actually
Mm,
see the work they are doing, right? So
yeah.
just, we tend not to, we don't reward practical experience in the educational system,
Mm,
which is really terrible.
mm,
Yeah.
well, I just wanted to say, I suppose the education side of things, of how I'm trying to learn what is the better approach, and I feel like my choice for going into electrical engineering was actually better for setting myself up for robotics engineering, a master's in robotics engineering, because it's broader in that aspect. If, well, for me at least, to tackle it in that aspect, rather than niching from a very early on, like doing something like maybe biomedical or aerospace, which is already niching within mechanical, and then going in
Yes.
inside it, which seems to be better. What is your opinion on that, actually? I'm
I
curious
think
about
broad
that.
is better early on.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do think that early on there needs to be, a breadth that I still think is not focused upon enough, but there also needs to be
Mm,
rigor. And so this, but the rigor is not, taking over specialized courses. I think that the rigor is
mm,
really in getting the practical experience, working with things fundamentally, right? Like having a very strong grasp of calculus,
mm,
having a very strong grasp of, if you're doing computer science, just general programming and algorithmic skills, right? Like one doesn't have to
mm,
be a rocket scientist. They just have to know how to
mm,
think computationally. If they know how
mm.
to think computationally, if they're good at math and science, I mean, look, if you have general good fundamental skills, you can read papers.
Yeah,
I read papers in other fields. I'm able to understand them, even though I didn't do my degree in them. So
yeah,
but that's kind of the secret, right? That's the
yes.
secret that they try to keep from you. They try to tell you, and they over here
Mm,
sound like conspiracy theory kind of thing, but they
mm,
here is kind of just a general norms. That's what I really mean. I mean, there's no real day over here. It's just norms.
mm,
But the
mm.
way that the norms are shaped, the way that things work right now, there is
Yeah.
an implication that if you're not doing this or that, if you don't follow this line of work, and if you don't get this degree and this degree and this degree, that you can't do this and you can't do that.
Mm, mm,
And I don't think that is true. My own experience has
mm,
shown that is not at all true.
mm,
So yeah, I think
mm.
I think you might be
Interesting.
actually on the right track. And so I would actually
Mm,
encourage you to take like rigorous, difficult courses that actually teach you
mm,
something and to not
mm,
focus too much on the, just things that maybe you will just get an A or, whatever, that you can pick up
mm.
on your own. So if you make that
Interesting.
investment now, then later on you will be in a much better situation. You'll be much stronger.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
I
really,
actually,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. To be fair, that is interesting. What that you mentioned grades again, because if I'm thinking of one day moving into the niche field of doing some research in some sort of cutting edge robotics field, which I'm trying to find out what is my interest, and I think I mentioned off cam that I'm interested in some sort of neuroscience, psychology, and robotics. So somewhere along the lines, I'm interested in those sort of things, and somehow combining them in the research sort of things. And you mentioned grades, and I actually for even subconsciously set myself up thinking like I spoke to someone who's also doing their research currently, who's doing their research currently, and they've told me that yeah, some people currently doing their research have at least a first, or at least a second, you know.
Important to be good. It's important to be
Yeah,
good, right?
yeah,
I do want to, underestimate that side of
yes,
it. But my view is you can be good. It's not. I don't know. Maybe because it's easy for me, I'm saying that. But I really do believe
mm,
that if you have a strong grasp of fundamentals and you just study smart, it's not
mm.
difficult to get a good grade.
Can we
I do
define studying smart? I don't know if we actually went into that. How does it
Well,
actually, the
making
actual
making
system?
sure that on the one hand you have good grasp of the material, that's why you're there. But on the other
Yeah,
hand, employing certain tactical strategies to make
tactical.
sure that you're doing well on the exams and the homework, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
there are tactical ways to do that, but it's not. You can do it. I mean, you have to figure it out. But and for some
Mm,
people, it's easier than others. I mean, for me,
mm,
it came very naturally to me. I don't know why. I mean, I don't want to cite something like IQ because I feel like that's
mm,
maybe an antiquated concept. But the
mm,
truth is, on all the aptitude tests, like everywhere, whenever I would take an exam, it's like I would
mm.
study for it only like less than 1 week, and I'll
Yeah.
still get very good grades. And other people, like, I've been studying for this for months, understand that. I'm
Mm,
like, I don't know why you've been studying for this for months. Like, I remember when I gave my a GMAT, which is the exam you give when you have to get into an MBA program. Um,
yeah.
and so it's basically, it's again an aptitude test, but it's meant for management prospective students in management sciences and
Mm,
MBA and business school.
mm,
So I gave the GMAT. Some people were like, "We've been studying for this for 6 months," and I'm like, "No, I just
mm.
bought Barron's, which is like this prep book, and it cost
Yeah,
like $100 or something like that." And I was like, "I
yeah.
just bought Barron's or like one of the prep or Kiplinger or Barron or one of those." And
Mm,
literally, like I booked the exam. I was like, "The exam is next month." I bought the books. The books came like a
yeah.
week later, and I was literally spending like maybe 1 to 2 hours per week
Mm,
leading up to the exam. And then a few days before the exam, I gave a few practice exams. I kind of saw
mm,
where I was going wrong. I
yeah.
recalibrated a little bit, and I ended up
Mm.
getting the 99th percentile on that. And so when
Can
I
I just
told people,
ask?
like, "Well, you're just rubbing it in
Mm,
our face because you're
yeah.
bright, so you're just rubbing it in our face."
Can I
I was
just
like,
ask,
"I'm
what
not
what
that,
what was the
yeah.
technique in the books that you did? What did you incorporate? What sort of techniques for learning, for actually learning to learn? Which is in an interesting concept on its own. How you actually take in material, how you process the material, and what you can actually apply with it, I suppose. And also the definition of, as you mentioned, intelligence is like, yeah. When I looked this up, this was like, there's some gray areas for me to understand about it. But yeah, how did you study?
Yeah. I think the real problem is that I think that the single, what a lot of people do agree, I would say, is that a single IQ number is problematic. So,
Mm,
that's kind of where I think the science on that falls. But, and I can send you a paper on this, but there is actually, and the reason
mm,
I know about this is because there is a connection in AI, because we're trying to make the systems
mm,
more intelligent. So we are
mm,
kind of getting back to what is intelligence. This is a question that I
mm.
am very interested in because what is
Yeah.
intelligence? Are there different kinds of intelligence? Yes, I mean, that goes without saying, but it turns out that when you look at studies,
Mm,
the SATs and the aptitude tests, and
yeah.
a fun fact is that the consulting companies, like a BCG is one example, the Boston Consulting Group, one of the big three consulting
Mm,
companies, along with Bain and McKinsey, that you might have heard of, right? So
mm,
BCG is one of the big three consulting firms in the world. They advise CEOs and companies on all kinds of things.
mm,
And when I remember when I was doing my PhD, when I was about to graduate with my PhD,
mm,
I thought about going into consulting briefly.
mm.
So I went to a webinar, a
Mm.
BCG webinar that was being held on our campus. And I
Yes.
remember I asked the recruiter that how do you actually make a selection? And they were like, well, we're not interested in grades. So I was like, what are you
Mm,
interested in? They were like, we want to actually see your test scores. So even if you
mm,
have your SED test scores from like 5 years ago, we still want to see that. That has more influence on our decision. This was
mm,
informal. Don't quote me on it. I don't think it's
mm.
actually on their website or anything. But this is what they said they wanted to see test scores. They said on the application form you will ask for test scores, and my test
Yes.
scores were very high. So there were other people who had gotten grades that were equal to mine or maybe even better, but the test scores were not that high. So I asked them
Mm,
why. Why do you look at test scores? They were like, because that is the single biggest predictor. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard this. Single biggest
mm,
predictor of success. They said that when we
mm,
see high SAT scores and ACT scores, that is the single
mm,
biggest predictor of whether the person will succeed. I have
mm.
asked this, I have
Within the
heard about
role. Within the role, as
that
in
generally they will succeed.
in life.
That they will generally succeed. That they will generally do very well. They will get promoted. They will work well in almost any role they are put in.
Interesting.
So there is something to be said about aptitude. That is the
Yes.
bottom line. There is something
Yes.
to be said for aptitude. It's all become
Mm,
very politically correct these days. But the
mm,
truth is, when you go and look at the literature, there was a very strong predictive element. There were
mm,
IQ tests that were kind of like the aptitude tests today
mm,
that were
mm.
administered at the age of 7. The
Yeah.
Stanford Binet test and some other tests, the Wechsler test, the Stanford Binet test, there are some tests that were administered
Mm,
at a very young age because the goal was that if you get them young, if you measure the aptitude young, you'll get an
yes.
unadulterated view of
Mm,
the aptitude because it won't be mediated by learning. Because what might
yeah.
happen is if you measure two people later on, it might be a difference in learning and some of the learning might come into the aptitude. So the question you're asking is a matter of fact retrieval and not so
Mm,
much of reasoning aptitude or
right.
verbal aptitude. So, in fact, they used to have these kinds of tests in a psychiatrist office
Mm,
in when you were 7 years old, when you were 9 years old, and then they measured correlations. What is the correlation between the Stanford Binet test scores versus the SAT test scores versus academic
mm,
achievement versus
mm,
professional success versus
mm.
success in marriage versus success in income? All highly
Fascinating.
correlated.
You
Highly
know what?
correlated.
Yeah, I actually read, or actually watched actually a podcast. I'm not sure if you heard of Lex Friedman before.
Uh-huh.
Actually, yes, he had an individual who was a psychologist, I believe, investigating intelligence, and one of the studies in Scotland, I believe, was on 11-year-olds, and I don't know, at the start of the 20th century. I don't know
Uh,
why,
I
but
think I've heard
taking
of.
away,
Yeah,
you know that one, and they basically track them.
talking about.
You track them for their life basically, and they see the correlation between how long they lived between
Right.
with intelligence, and that was correlated with intelligence with how, which was everyone has access to free healthcare, or I believe so.
Right.
And
No, but this
what
is
is
the
that
point.
about?
They're all highly correlated. So verbal
Mm,
aptitude, right? So in the SAT and all these standards exams, they have a verbal score, a math score, and a writing score. They have three scores. The writing
yeah.
score is subjective. You have to write a kind of essay, and they score you like the IELTS or the TOEFL and so on. But the verbal and the math are multiple choice. So you take
Mm,
those exams, and then they give you a percentile. They have a way of normalizing it.
mm,
And there's a verbal score and a math score. A lot of people are able to do well on math scores. I mean, I know a lot of international students, they can do well on math scores, but verbal score
mm,
is surprisingly difficult to get very high percentile on. And to have an
mm,
aptitude where you do well on both is remains
mm,
very difficult. So to actually do very well on both of them, on both verbal and math, which can test your verbal plus your quantitative skills. This is not like complicated math. This is,
yes.
just very simple. It's not, you just need high school math to solve many of the problems. And yet there
Mm,
is a difference. No matter how much you study, there is a
mm,
difference. So it's still not
mm,
clear, I think, to a lot of people that where these differences are coming from and what does it really mean and can they be corrected. I think that the answer in all of these cases that it depends, and to some extent, yes. But I
mm,
think that we cannot get away from the hard truth that there is a correlation. Correlation does not mean causation, but there is
mm,
a correlation
yeah.
between these tests and your scores on these tests and
Mm,
your success and longevity on a
mm,
number of fronts. Um,
interesting.
and so you just can't explain away these correlations. Um, and
Mm,
that is way too convenient. That is hiding from a deeper truth. So
yeah,
we know
that
there are
seems.
differences. Everyone is not equal. And
Mm,
so I think it is very important for everyone to recognize where they are. That's what kind of what I was saying earlier, that you do have to
mm,
recognize your aptitudes. That what are your
mm,
aptitudes? Where are you strong? Where are you weak? And you need to compensate for
mm,
it. For me, like for example, I would say that I am not a natural social person. And I knew
mm,
this from the very beginning. My parents knew this. Thankfully, that they
mm,
cared very deeply about it. They cared a lot more about my social skills than about my academic skills. So they
mm,
were very careful. They always took me to events, whenever there was a marriage in the family and so
mm,
on. They were like, this is not optional. You are coming with us, right? And you
mm,
have to meet people, you have to greet people, you have to say hi, you have to go and talk to people. That it was
mm,
very awkward. It was a horribly awkward feeling. A lot of
mm,
parents now would be like, well, it's making my child uncomfortable. It might be bad for my
mm,
child. I thank God that my
mm,
parents told me, no, you're going to come and you're
mm.
going to go and talk to people. You're not going to sit in a corner, right? You
Yes.
have to go and
Yeah.
say hi to those people. You have to go and meet those people. You have to socialize. And
Mm,
now that comes in use. Now when I
yeah.
go to funders meetings, now when I go and talk to program manager, I still
Yeah.
feel awkward, but I
Yeah.
feel a lot less awkward, and I have
Mm,
the tools. I feel like I have the
mm,
tools, even when I'm not feeling it, even when I'm
mm.
not feeling like I want to go and talk to a stranger
But can I
and
just
say,
say, but you
I
said
know
you have
how
the
to do
tools.
it. I've been trained,
Mm.
right? So
But you
I'm
said
able
you
to
have the,
use
as
my
you say,
training,
but
and I
you
can
say you have the
equalize.
training. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
equalized, right? So maybe
Mm,
I still won't be as good as someone who is really charismatic. I mean,
mm,
I guess on the upper end it could be someone like Bill Clinton, right? Who was extremely charismatic, regardless of
mm,
whether you agree with his politics or not. They say that Taylor Swift and Bill
mm,
Clinton are two people that a lot of people say like they just have this thing where they go up to people and they look them in the eye, and
mm,
when they talk to you, it's the same quote. And the Kennedys
mm,
had that. The quote is, which I've heard now in three different situations when I read the news,
mm,
is that when they talk to you, you feel like you are the only person they are talking to. They have
mm,
that magic ability. They look into your eyes, they shake your hand, and you
mm,
can almost feel like even in a crowd of hundreds of people, they can
mm,
literally make you feel in that 1 minute that they are just talking to you. Like this is a private conversation. They are listening to you. They are leaning in. And some
mm,
people have that natural ability. So
mm.
fine, let them. That's okay. Like you don't
Mm.
have that ability, and they do it. So they're leaning into their strengths. That is what
Yeah.
they should be doing. You don't
Yeah.
have the ability, but that doesn't mean that you can't train yourself and mitigate for your weaknesses But if
mm,
you really want to be very, very, very good, I think
mm,
that you do have to recognize that, look, the thing that you don't have natural aptitude in, you're
mm,
unlikely, perhaps, and it doesn't mean it won't happen, but you're
mm,
unlikely if you don't have natural aptitude in something, no matter how hard you train. I think you
mm.
can become very good at it, but you
Yes.
cannot become exceptionally good at it. Because to become
Mm,
exceptionally good, you're on the margin. On the
mm,
margin, you need all your strengths and you need a bit of
mm,
luck. So you need to
mm,
be strongest of the strong in that thing. That means you
mm,
need natural talent, you need
mm,
training, you
mm,
need all of that.
mm,
Plus, you need a bit of luck, and then
mm,
you're at the frontier. So
mm,
that is why it is so important to
mm,
recognize your strengths, because you can become very good at the things that you're weak
mm,
in by
mm,
training, but you
mm.
can't be on the margin. You won't be able to make the dent. You won't be
But
able to
is
make the
self, but is
margin.
self-awareness, linked, correlated to how intelligent you are? Because
No, it's the
self-awareness,
opposite. I would say
but
it's the
yeah,
opposite. And I'll tell you
interesting.
a study. The reason why I know this is because I can give you an indirect, because self-awareness is a nebulous concept to measure, because you can't ask
Mm,
people are they self-aware. That's not going to work. So you need an indirect way to measure self-awareness. I'll
yeah.
tell you a famous study. So there was a study, it was published in a major journal. This is quite recent. It wasn't a long time back.
Mm,
Um, Basically what they did was they gave some data to,
mm,
there were people who were like, statistically very savvy, and they,
mm,
they measured that could make out that, like, this group of people were mathematically, they had a lot of aptitude, they had high numeracy. So they
right.
certainly had aptitude and numeracy, which it tends to be correlated, I would say, with IQ and with aptitude tests.
Mm,
And then there was another group of people who were like more normal, they were like average numeracy, or they had average aptitude. They gave
mm,
both of them the same data,
yeah.
and what they tried to do was to they had another factor, which
Mm,
was, I think, the data was on gun violence or something like that, and they
yeah.
also measured politics through a poll. They kind of asked they had a survey, and they kind of asked the people whether they were more left leaning or right leaning. Here in the US,
Mm,
right leaning is more, favors gun rights more, and left
mm,
leaning favors gun rights less. They want more gun control, and they're not in favor of the Second Amendment here in the US,
mm,
which guarantees the right to bear arms.
mm,
That's a very controversial amendment in a way, but the Conservative Party, the right leaning party, are very supportive of that. They see anything that tries to restrict guns as an affront on the Second Amendment, and usually that goes with lawsuits and so
mm,
on. So the point here was that the
mm,
data was given to both groups of people, and
yes.
it turns out that the people who were quote unquote smarter or had higher
Mm,
numeracy, they
mm,
were able to spin the data completely without realizing it, in a way,
mm,
in such a way that it supported their politics. Like, they were able to
mm.
use the data and find things in the data that they were given.
Can I
Like,
just
people have
ask, actually?
argument that gun rights is good, gun rights is not
Yeah.
good, gun rights causes more violence, gun rights
Y-
causes less violence, the exact same
mm,
data, okay,
mm,
that aligned with the politics, and they were able to make a very convincing, very
yeah.
persuasive case based on the same data, and they
Yeah.
really believed it. They really believed what they were doing. And then
Yeah.
the people who had less numeracy, they were a little bit more, they couldn't quite make the case, they couldn't quite
Mm,
make the case. And so what this really showed was that if you're smarter, or if you have more numeracy, smarter in the narrower sense, that if you have more numeracy, that it's actually really dangerous, because you would be susceptible, dangerous in the sense that you would be susceptible to what
mm,
we call confirmation bias. So in psychology,
mm,
this is called confirmation bias, which is, I would say, the
mm.
opposite of self-awareness. So when you have
Right.
higher confirmation bias, that is anti-self-awareness, because
Mm,
confirmation bias means that you're going to look for evidence proactively, sometimes without realizing it. You will look for evidence, and you will give more weight to evidence that will
mm.
support your beliefs.
You'll
And
find your
because
own
of
truth, basically. Yeah, you'll find your own truth. You're looking for what you believe in. You're not going to look outside of it. This is
you
where
have
it
your
is.
own truth. You already have
Mm,
your own truth. You find
yes.
evidence to support your truth, to make your truth even
Right.
stronger truth, right?
Right.
So that's even more dangerous. And so, once upon a time, there used to be this view that, people look at the evidence and they form some judgment, and the evidence comes first. Well, no, we don't know where the truth comes from, but we
Mm,
do know that the truth comes from opinion for many people.
mm,
Opinion
mm,
is linked to identity. And,
mm,
so if you identify very strongly with gun rights in some way, or you identify very strongly with political party, by
mm.
proxy, you identify very strongly with gun rights. So if you see
Yes.
evidence that says that gun rights are good, or maybe books that
Yeah.
you see evidence that gun rights are bad. That is
Mm.
an affront. That is an attack on your identity, which is a very personal thing. It is not objective. It is a very
Mm.
personal feeling. It is a very personal thing. You will not be
Yeah.
self-aware enough usually to recognize what is happening inside you. So
Mm.
what you will do is that when you're given evidence,
Mm.
you will find or spin the evidence in such a way that it will support your identity. It will not attack your identity.
Isn't this narcissistic a bit? Is this a bit narcissistic in a way? In a way, or just would you not say that because or I guess you're manipulating.
No,
You're
not
in a way
really.
not really.
You're exploiting ambiguity. It's a very
Right.
interesting finding because the truth is that in the classroom, the way that you see data in the classroom, which is another one of my pet peeves, is not
Yeah.
that's not the way data shows up in the real world. I mean, the data in the real
Mm.
world is messy. It is ambiguous. There are lots of data points, some of which are
Mm.
irrelevant, some of which will go against what you believe, some of which will go in favor of what you believe. There are ways
Mm.
of doing inclusion, exclusion, what you include in your data, what you exclude in your data, what is
Mm.
significant, what you count or discount. I mean, you can see this in politics all the time. Like
Mm.
when you hear that this person lost the poll or this person lost the election and they were expecting them to win the election, you'll
Yeah.
find that suddenly after the fact, everyone is changing their tune. Like, if this person won the election and the pollsters were saying they should not win the election, then all
Mm.
of a sudden you will start finding all the creative explanations. With Hillary Clinton, you saw this when Hillary Clinton lost in 2016.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
no one, I can assure you can go and look at this. Very interesting. A lot of decision scientists commented on this. A lot of people who investigate confirmation bias, so on.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. After she lost the election, right? First of all, it was a very narrow loss. She lost a few states, and again, I'm not a political person, so I have no views on
Right.
this. Just giving an interesting finding. So when she lost the election, basically she lost because in some states like Michigan and some of the Rust Belt states here in the US, the Midwest, she lost by narrow margins. Some of those states, and so what that means is that Trump got those states, and he ended up getting it's a complicated process, but basically he ended up winning the election because of that. It's not based on the popular vote. You have to win states basically to get the presidency. So the very narrow margin of win, and a lot of the polls were predicting going up to that election that Clinton would win. Now after she lost, right? So Clinton didn't campaign in the Midwest very strongly. Okay, so after she lost, now all of a sudden everyone is coming out and saying that, oh, this is what you get for not campaigning in the Midwest. Like if she would have campaigned in the Midwest, it would have made a difference. This and that. Well, where were you, right, before the election? Why weren't you saying that before the election, right? When you go and look at the same people, you don't find any news articles where they're actually saying Clinton should go and campaign in the Midwest. They were like, well, Clinton is campaigning in Georgia and some of the other places where maybe she should have, where she won or she had a very close win or close loss or something like that. But it turns out in some of the places where she campaigned, she actually did. There were also narrow wins in some places. But you don't find them saying that there were narrow wins in those places. Well, maybe if she hadn't gone to those places, those would have been narrow losses. That doesn't occur to us. And there's a very famous poker player who actually wrote this. Who's now she's a retired poker player, very famous poker player. Her name is Annie Duke. She wrote a book called. Her new book just came out, but before that, she wrote another book called How to Decide. And she wrote 3 books recently, and the most recent one is called Quit. And then the one before that was How to Decide, and then the one before that was Thinking in Bets.
I was just going to say, is this not making this? She was not in this decision sort of. Of course, from poker.
She had a very scientific view on decision making because before she became a poker player, she was actually a PhD student in cognitive science back in the day. So she had some training in cognitive science. She didn't complete a PhD, but then she went on to become a poker player. She played poker for many years. She won a lot of money in poker. She was there on Celebrity Apprentice on TV and other places.
Wasn't she on the Next Freeman podcast? I think she was on the Next Freeman podcast. I've seen her just I think so.
The new book just came out. So usually people, her new book just came out. So I think when people come out with books, they tend to get these podcasts. Try to sell the books. But my point was that she had this very interesting phrase. I don't know if it's originally her phrase or, it was someone else's phrase that she kind of reused. But she called it the cognitive chainsaw. And so the way to think about this is that when you're looking out into the future, it's kind of like looking at the trunk of a tree. And there are lots of branches. The future is uncertain. You cannot predict the future. You can sort of have forecast. You can say, okay, with 60%, and that's what the polls do, right? That there's a chance this person will win this state, or this person will win the election, or this person will become the next Nobel Prize winner, or this person will be a billionaire, or this company will stock price will go up by 20% in the next year. Everything is a prediction, or that tomorrow it will rain. Now, of course, as technology improves, as you have more data, as you have more historical data, as you have better understanding of the system, the fundamentals, you will make a better forecast. It is very unlikely in the real world that you will ever be able to make a 100% accurate forecast. It's a probabilistic forecast. And this is, we have to become comfortable with this. There is no way around this. There's a probabilistic forecast. So when you're looking up at the tree, with 60% probability, this branch will span out. That's assuming your probabilities are correct, which it could be right wrong. Everyone has a different probabilistic forecast. Let's assume that there is some one single forecast. Even if there is a one single correct forecast, which is not going to be the case, but suppose there is one single correct forecast where I tell you, okay, my forecast is correct, and God, I will tell you what the forecast is, and you can assume that my probabilities are correct. But it's still a probability. If I tell you that tomorrow, with 60% probability, the Facebook stock price will go up by 5%. With 10% probability, it will go down by 10%. And with 30% probability, it will go down by 25%. Even give you my reasoning. I tell you why I'm making those forecasts, what data I'm relying on. I give you very good scientific reasons. This is again where the high numeracy and high aptitude will come in, because people who have high numeracy will basically be able to make very convincing cases.
I was just going to say, is that there? I was just going to say, if there's a correlation with numeracy and making decision making, of course, is that how I guess
convincing people that your data is your data, right? But my point here is, let's say you're correct. Let's say there's no confirmation bias, and your objective and your forecasts are actually correct. You actually have it down correct. Well, tomorrow, one of these three things will happen. Assuming that you're correct, one of these three things will happen, right? And you might assume that it's the one that is 60% the probability. Well, by definition, the other 40% will occur 40% of the time. So if you make a forecast every day, let's say I make a forecast every day, let's say it's the same forecast, 60%, 40%, 10%, and there's a way mathematically to do this, so that even if you have like very different, it turns out like there's a systematic way to measure your performance. And the intuition is that, if you're making forecasts, then if you're making a forecast 60% of the time, then 60% of the time the forecast will occur. So this is frequentist probability, right? That if I'm making a rain forecast, it's very easy to see this with weather. Let's say if I'm making a forecast for weather, well, if I'm making 100 forecasts, and some percentage of the time I have to be correct. So that's how you can measure the accuracy. So you will not be correct 100% of the time, but whatever your threshold is, if I say 60% probability, this is what will happen, and I do that 100 times, then you can sort of imagine that 60% of the time that event should occur. If I'm making the same forecast many times, right? And you can generalize this to heterogeneous events and probability. That's the intuition. Okay, so if I'm a good forecaster, then if I'm saying that something will happen 60% of the time, then when you measure my performance over a span of time, then 60% of the time what I said occurred should occur approximately. And there's even a quantitative way to measure what your error is, your forecasting error, right?
Well, forecasting meaning very general terms, that what you predict or what you're looking to. That's why weather for.
There's a formula for this. So there has to be an event that you're predicting. So if I say that the market will go up, right? Let's say I'm making a prediction about tomorrow. So I make some predictions about tomorrow. Well, tomorrow we can see what happened, but I can't be vague. I have to tell you what the events are. And then one of the events will occur. So that is a data point. Then I make another forecast. Very simple example. And you can try this exercise.
What is it against?
Hold on, let me give you the exercise. So suppose your exercise is, will the stock market, you can pick the index. I think in the UK it's the FTSE index, the FTSE. So you can look it up, it's online, right? You can look what the FTSE price level is, the FTSE 100, I believe, in the UK, which are the top 100 companies or something like that. So it's called the FTSE FTSE. So if you look at the FTSE, there's a price, you will see it. If let's do it right now. So if we look at the FTSE price, the FTSE 100, currently it is 7,318.04. That's what it's showing me. I don't know
Right.
if it's dollars or in what the thing, and I believe it might be in pounds, but basically
Yeah.
it's just about 7,300, right?
Yeah.
Based on the data, based on what you read, you can predict that will it go up or down, right? So you just assume, okay, will it go up or down? Very simple, right? And you can be very precise. You can say that, okay, compared to its price at noon on day X, when I look at the price again at noon on day X plus 1, will the price be higher or lower? And you can even make it even more precise by saying greater than equals or lower. Has to be one or the other, right? And you can put a probability. You have to put a probability. So there are only two events over here, right?
Yes.
So you can say, okay, with 60% probability, I predict that it will be greater than equal, and 40% probability it will be less. Well, the next day, one of the two things will occur.
Yes.
Right? You make a note of that. Then you again make a prediction. You're allowed to make another prediction for the next day.
Yeah.
You can change your probabilities. So if you do that, and you can almost think of this as a spreadsheet. So you have whether it will go up or down, you have an up probability or down probability.
Yeah.
And it's a time series. Let's say we do this for 10 days. So on days 1 to 10, those are your rows in your table.
Yeah.
And of course, the second column is 1 minus or 100 minus the first column because there are only two events. But you
are you plotting this on a Cartesian plane at all on X?
Right?
We're not
We're
plotting.
not
Okay.
plotting anything. We are just putting numbers.
Right.
I am being very fundamental here. There's no plot.
Right. Okay.
You're just putting probabilities, and these are your probabilities. You looked at the data, you decided what the probabilities were one day in advance.
Yeah.
This is your prediction. This is your forecast, right? You have your forecast. You can, by the way, you don't have to make the forecast yourself. You can actually find financial advisors and compare that forecast. This is what I like to do all these things when I'm actually investing. So you have, let's say, 40%, 60%. Tomorrow you might say 30-70. Another day you might say 10-90. That's fine. You make your forecast on day X for the next day. Then the next day you make another forecast for the next day. And so on. You do this for 10 days. Okay? You get the two numbers, right? So it's like 10 rows, a P in the first column, 100 minus P in the second column. Those are your two probabilities that you're predicting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, of course, we call this resolution. On the day X plus 1, your forecast for day X will resolve. Basically, we will know what happened. Right? So we will know on day X plus 1 that which event happened, which of the two events happened. Right? So you make a note of that. It's a 1-0. Either we can call it event 1, event 2. Event 1 is it goes down. Event 2 is greater than equal. So your first column is event 1. Your second column is event 2. They're very clearly defined. I'm defining everything very clearly. There is nothing vague in what I'm saying, right? I'm giving you very clear definitions of what the events are and what we mean, right? So there is no ambiguity. This is something that is very important in forecasting. The only key variable is that you have to come up with the probabilities. And
Which we
could you how you do that?
I was just going to ask. There could be the more, how you could define it, how you make that,
forecasting performance. Yeah, like you have two forecasters who's right, but we're not restricting you. Go and look at whatever data you want. Go and look at the polls. Go and look at the financial data. Go and read the news. You know, hey, if you're really good, people will come and give you billions of dollars to invest because you're very good forecasters. You know, if it will go up or down, and you'll make money for people. How do you think hedge funds operate? People make billions of dollars by being good forecasters. Billions of dollars. That's how much of a business this is. So you have event 1. That is, will it go up or down? Up or greater than equal. Event 2, less than. So far, so good. We fixed them.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what the event is. We have to compare to noon the previous day.
Yes.
We are looking at 12 p.m. UK time when the markets will be open.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make it as precise as you want. It has to be very precise. There must be no room for resolution error. The resolution must be unambiguous. That is very important. If there's anything vague, then you have to make it clear. Sometimes you have to bound the problem.
How would it be vague, though? How could it be possibly vague? How could it be defined vaguely? How would that actually happen if
So, the market will go up or down. What does that mean?
Yeah. Oh, right. I see what you mean.
When do we measure the market?
Yes. Right.
What if it's equal, right?
Yeah.
So we're removing all of that ambiguity,
Yeah.
right? So I am saying this is the definition of the market.
Mm.
I'm not even going to use the word the market. I'm only interested in the FTSE 100. I don't care about the others. If there are others, we will do a different forecasting exercise, such as for the S&P 500 here in the UK. If we are doing it for a stock, then we are going to do it for the stock. If we are going to do it for an industry sector, let's say the automobile industry, then we are going to do it for that sector. We have to define what that sector means. What are the companies in the sector? How do we measure? You must be precise. It is one of the lessons I hope you will take away from this conversation. I feel that younger people are not precise enough. I yell at my students for this all the time. I'm like, it is not a sin to bound the problem. We are not dredging the ocean. You can be interested in 5 different things, but you must be precise. When push comes to shove, you must be precise. You must have the guts to be precise. It's a sign of confidence to be precise. Because you're willing to take a stand. That's what that means.
And that doesn't mean, and that doesn't actually, and it doesn't actually mean that that is a certain truth either. You're just at this moment, the current moment.
We are saying we are uncertain. We are saying we are doing a probability. I am uncertain. I am just formalizing it. I am saying that I am uncertain. I'm not putting 100% probability. I could, but I'm not going to. I am saying that no, I have a 70% probability here, but I'm uncertain. I don't know. Right? But the next it will resolve. The resolution is not 70-30. The resolution is that either it happened or it didn't. Right? It won't happen with 70% probability. Either it happens, the observation is that either you observe it or you don't. There's no probability when you're observing it. This is why it's like a cognitive chainsaw, because when you observe it, it's like you're slicing off all the other branches. And only one branch is remaining, which is what you observed. But before you observed it, before the event occurred, the world was uncertain. There were many branches. So sometimes we get into this habit, this bias, where we have hindsight bias. That's the word. That when we observe something, then we are prone to hindsight bias. You heard the saying, hindsight is 20/20. That's hindsight bias. It means that when you look back, you only see one branch, and somehow you feel like you should have seen the one branch, or that there was only one branch, when the reality is there were many branches. You could have done a prediction of which branch would stand out, but there's uncertainty in the world, and there's also lack of knowledge. There are two sources. One is hidden information. So this you might be able to uncover with more data, with more skills. The hidden information could become less hidden, the better you become, and the more data you have access to. So as case in point, with hedge funds, they used to buy, and they still buy a lot of social media data. They buy satellite data. So if you buy satellite data, why is that useful? Because using the satellite data, you can actually look at the parking lots of the superstores, like Walmart. Like in the UK, you have, I guess, the Tesco's, right?
Yes, we have Tesco's, yeah.
You have parking lots. The satellites will show you parking lot images, and you can count the number of cars. And if there are fewer cars, that means there's less demand. So that's an extra data point for you in real time. So if I look at the satellite images today, if yesterday there were 100 cars, or last Sunday there were 100 cars, but today there are only 50 cars, well, there's a good bet that Tesco stock price might be going down, or that I might predict that Tesco stock price would go down.
This links very well.
That's a data point, right, that I can use.
This links very well into your field of work, I suppose, as well. This is like in terms of plotting, I guess, having more data for AI. I'm not no shape or form, but having more data.
Just to close the loop. So let's say you have your table, so you have your 2 columns, you have your 10 rows, and you have your resolution criteria. The resolution criteria is, and you will have 9 data points for the resolution criteria, going from day 2 to day 11, right? Because the prediction you make on day 1, you can resolve on day 2. So we can almost say I'm making forecasts on day 1 to 10, and the resolutions will happen on days 2 to 11. And so it's still like, we can still put the resolution in that same row, right? Even though the resolution is happening a day later, but I'm making my next forecast. But now you have like whether event 1 occurred or event 2 occurred. Let's say event 1 occurred, then I give it to 1, otherwise it's a 0. But that's for the third column. Okay? So now I have event 1, probability column, event 2, which is 100 minus event 1 by definition. Event 1 is greater than equal, event 2 is less than. These are my forecasts. And then the third column is that did event 1 occur on the next day or event 2? Now this you can do for any events. You can even expand the column. So that's event 1, 2, 3, 4. But I'm just giving you a very simple case study. So now you have a 10 by 3 table.
Yeah.
Right? Now you can measure performance. A very simple way to measure performance is that, let's say that I predicted 70% for event 1 and 30% for event 2.
Yeah.
And event 1 occurred. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I can, that the weight that I would give to that the accuracy, if you will, is 0.7 on a scale of 0 to 1, right? The fact that event 1 occurred would get a 0.7, and I can do that for all of the rows, and then I can compute my average performance. This is one way to do it. You can look at the extremes, right? Like the extremes are, if I predicted the correct event with 100% probability, then you can sort of see that my score would be 100%.
And then you would also see that, that the probabilities are actually not true. You would have to adjust to them, because that 70 to 30 is not going to be actually true at all.
If the event occurs, then, and I said 70-30, that would be weighted higher than if I had done 60-40. But if I was wrong, then the 70-30 would be worse off than the 60-40. You see the trade-off, right?
Interesting.
Think about it this way. If you said, okay, with 90% probability, the event 1 is occurring.
Yeah.
If event 1 actually occurs,
then
you get 0.9. But if event 1 does not occur, right, then you're only losing 10% of the score intuitively. But if you said event 1 is occurring with 60% probability, and event 1 occurs, then you're getting only 0.6. You're not getting 0.9. So you're losing a little bit. But if event 2 occurs, then now instead of 0.1, you are gaining 0.4.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
This is the trade-off.
Yeah.
So, of course, right, you can take a risk and just go for 100% and 0%. But then you're taking a huge risk. And if you only do 50-50, then you're doing no better than random, right? Why would I need you? I'm just tossing a coin. So the trick is, how well can I do? And the thing is that the more data and the better you forecast, the more data you use and the better your aptitude is in forecasting that event, the higher your score will be.
Your performance, yeah.
And even small differences can make all the difference between winners and losers.
Over a longer frame of, or a longer period of time.
If I am better than you 4% of the time on average, that's pretty good. I mean, 4% of the time, if I'm predicting the market better than you, that's 365 days in a year.
Yeah.
So on 12 days out of 365 days, I'm doing better than you. So on average, I'm going to win. Right? I will do better than you. I will win. My returns will compound more than yours. And I will be more correct than you. And in winner takes all markets, in competitive markets, everything will flow to me, not to you. Because over time, the superiority of my performance will grow more and more because there's a compounding effect usually. And there's also this other effect that if people see I'm the winner or they have evidence that I'm the winner and they come to me, then I will get more data. Because people are investing with me, so I have more resources. And so I can actually have more data. So in fact, you will be in a downward spiral. And so the small difference, the small lack of advantage that you had for whatever reason would become bigger and bigger till at some point you will go extinct. And this is the winner takes all.
And actually, to be fair, and this is actually applicable in that aspect of, the small changes of every single day. There's this compounding effect of you making whatever change it might be in the day that you're working on, you're trying to learn, doing a little thing, seeing it.
That on the margin, right? I said that on the margin you have to do well.
Yeah.
On the margin you need everything going for you, and then you need some luck. Remember, so that's what I really meant by that. That's why I wanted to go through that example. That even though it sounds so obvious, that at the margin you need everything going for you. You need to be a great forecaster in a way of your own strengths and weaknesses, of where to put your resources, of which decisions to make, who to hire, what to invest in, what degree to pursue, what projects to pursue. All of those are decisions. And those decisions are based on forecasts in a way. Because when you make a decision, and I decide I'm going to hire this person, I am making a decision. I am forecasting that
Yeah.
by hiring this person and not this person will work out better for me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it is a forecast.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
that might not be very evident in my mind what the number is, what the probability is,
And
but
you
it
know
is a
what?
forecast.
And you know what? I find it so difficult in that way, because this relates to in terms of making a career for yourself as well. How can someone choose if there's, if you don't have the data behind you, how can you forecast as a young individual? Whereas you have to take away what individuals that are, I guess, older than you have more experience in that way, in that way
That's
as
the
well.
question of the ages. So that's the
Like,
question that makes the difference, right?
mm,
That are you making a good forecast? But you know yourself best. At the end of the day, if you're not
mm,
self-aware, you have to become more self-aware, maybe by talking to people. But the
yeah,
bottom line is you know yourself better than anyone else. So you
mm,
have, based on what and I think that is generally true. I mean, of course, some people say you may not be objective about yourself, but let me actually rephrase what I just said. I think you are in the
yeah,
best position to know yourself. You may not
mm,
know yourself, but you are in the best position to know yourself. And
mm,
sometimes that knowledge will come externally. Sometimes
mm,
the knowledge will come from the objective measures like
mm,
testing, like grading. I mean, there is no
mm,
doubt that they do measure some things. They might be noisy, but they
mm,
have some signal, right? So there are
mm.
things about what you're
I
good
love,
at, what you
I
like.
love
There's
those
an
terms.
emotional signal. There's an emotional
Mm,
signal. Some things you
mm,
like to do, some things you don't like
mm,
to do. So there's an
mm,
emotional signal. There's a signal from the world. There's a signal
mm,
from your friends. There's a signal from family. There's a signal for how the world is valuing your skills. And I
mm,
think that you have to recognize that every signal is noisy,
mm.
but there is signal in all of these, and so you can't pick and choose. If you pick and
Yeah.
choose, then you're falling prey to confirmation bias. So if you're not getting good grades, and you tell yourself, well, grades are a noisy signal, and oh,
Mm,
by the way, this one I'm doing really good at, and I'm getting very positive feedback. So this is
mm.
the signal, and here
Yeah.
is noise. Well, no, it doesn't
Yeah.
work like that.
Yeah.
Everything
That's
is a
what's,
signal. You have to be
yeah,
objective.
that's really interesting as well. Also telling yourself, this doesn't matter in that way, because this lie, in a way, it doesn't matter to me that I got, because you got a bad grade, for example. I told myself, yeah, that doesn't really matter. It's
There
just,
is signal in that.
yeah.
There is signal in that, but it's not a perfect signal.
Mm,
And it might be, you could turn it around and say, well, you know what? I think maybe this is a signal. Why don't I ask myself, why did I get a bad grade?
mm,
I did that. Whenever I would get a bad grade, I just got, so I love to pursue degrees through distance learning. Right now
interesting.
I'm pursuing a degree in epidemiology, through the London
What
School
is
of
that?
Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, which is,
Interesting.
it's kind of like the LSE, right? I think it's the best school in the UK on public health, on epidemiology and
LS,
public health.
what,
LSHTM.
LSHTM. What
Yeah,
university?
the
Is that
London
the
School of Hygiene and Tropical
London School
Medicine.
of, oh, okay, okay, okay.
Falls within the
Right.
University of London, and it's very well known for public health, for demography, for public health, for epidemiology. So I
Mm,
decided to pursue a degree, and it's a usual system. You study for it, and then you have to take exams at the end of the year. So it's very
right.
rigorous. It's not online. You really have to study. You get all the materials. It's true you're not going to classes, so the
Mm,
modality is all online, but the
mm,
examinations are real examinations, and that's why I love to pursue it. That
interesting.
you're not going and giving online tests. You have to go and do written exams, or you have to write a lot, and it's proper
Mm,
British exams, as you very well know, right? It happens once at the end of the year, especially in
mm,
social science, right? In the social science degrees, it's like there's one exam in the summer for the
mm,
course. Sometimes there could
mm.
be a middle exam, or a middle assignment, especially
Yeah,
in graduate courses. But typically, there is a big kind of assessment, whether
yeah.
it's an exam or a paper or whatever it is, that happens at the end of the year, in the summer usually, or before the summer, right? In many
Mm,
cases,
mm.
that system still holds, and so I'll just give you an example. So I just had finished my first year
Yes.
in LSHTM through distance. I gave the exams. I took the exams. Again, I studied for it, but I didn't obsess about it. I studied for it a
Mm,
few days before the exam, but I did study the fundamentals very strongly, because that's why I'm doing the degree. That's why I'm
mm,
paying for it, because I'm very interested in making sure I understand the fundamentals. I understand how to read the public health papers. I understand the
mm,
statistics. Epidemiology and public health are very strong statistics. So
mm,
to me, the value is in knowing more about statistics. I feel that I'm
mm,
learning a lot about statistics through epidemiology, which is very
mm,
interesting to me.
mm,
Because you get to look at real data and actually do the
mm,
statistics on real data, which is very valuable to me in my research. I'm already seeing the payoff in my
mm,
research. We are using those advanced statistics in our research, and so that's already a payoff for me. But why did I bring this up? So I took 4 exams.
Yes.
On 3 of them, I got a 5 on 5 distinction.
Right.
On 1 of them, I got a 2 on 5, and 2 is the passing grade. I was mortified. For a moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I should complain. I should file for a regrade. Why did I get a 2 on 5? This was like one of those exams where it was not super objective. You had to like submit a written assignment, and then they would read the written assignment. And one of the written assignments was an actual review of a paper, and the other one was that you had to write part of a paper. I'm like, I review paper for my job, and I write papers for my job.
Yeah, there was sort of an expectation.
Graduate student, I know how it works. Probably there's a
Yes.
graduate student who is a PhD student or something like that, who was giving me a 2 out of 5. Then I stopped. I did not apply for a regrade. I just heard about this 2 days ago, and I had decided not to apply for a regrade. I was like, you know what? Why? I think that they're on the right track. If they are saying that I'm a passing grade, then I'm a passing grade, and I can't pick and choose. Because on the other 3 things, they gave me a 5 on 5, and on this one, they gave me a 2 out of 5, and the average that I'm getting is 4.25 out of 5, which is still distinction level. So maybe the 2 should have been a 3, maybe the 2 should have been a 4, but the same can be said for the 5 on 5. The 5 should also have been a 4 maybe. Why was it a 5? So we can't pick and choose. We can't say that why was this a 2 and not a 5 or a 4.
Yeah.
And then not say the same thing for the 5 on 5. So I was like, you know what, on average, the signal is coming through. If I believe that I'm very good, if I believe that I'm doing this right, then the grader and the university is not disagreeing with me. They are saying that on average, you are getting a 4.25 out of 5, which is still distinction level. So why do you need to be perfect in everything? Why do you need everyone to give you positive feedback all the time? There's going to be noise, but on average, you're getting the signal. So that's what I would tell you, that you need to trust in the system to give you good signals on average. And the on average part is important, but you cannot pick and choose. You must do it on average, and then you have to accept the results. Unless there is very good reason to believe that something is going wrong, but it has to be a very good reason. It can't be enough to say, oh, the system is rigged against me. The system, I am talented. The system does not recognize. I think that those are self-defeating, and ultimately you are doing a disservice to yourself if you do that. The system on average is giving you a signal. It's one signal out of many. It's a signal that does matter. I do believe in it as an educator that the signal does matter on average.
Yeah. What an interesting way to look at it, actually. That faith in the... sometimes it's like, oh, that didn't work. And rather than blaming, or rather questioning myself, it's great. It takes the reflection process of like, what actually went wrong? What actually was the problem that I need to look at? And it's usually actually within something that was inside of myself that I am afraid of actually admitting to myself, because it's so difficult to say. For example, let's say it's a test, and I didn't do well on this test.
Identity, right? It's like as I was saying, that it's treated internally as an attack on the identity, and it gets personal. Element of that. We can't hide from that. We have this mindset, I think, in society, modern society, that we can separate the personal from the professional and so on. And I just think that there is a personal dimension to almost everything. And if we recognize that, then we are in a stronger position to not take things personally by recognizing that there's a chance you will take it personally. And that you might actually be taking it personally. And so if you recognize that, if you bring it out in the open, then you can start to separate what the personal element is and what the objective element is. Like when we write proposals in my field, you win, like 20%. So I'll tell you something very interesting. So I saw that your previous interview, I forget her name. What's her name again?
Twani Rapali Vani.
I don't know if she told you this, but we didn't meet, but we were in the award ceremony. I don't know if she mentioned that the IET, it's a UK society, right? The one of the oldest society.
Yeah, Institute of Engineering of Technology. Yes.
We were both nominated for the Mike Sargent Early Career Medal, along with one other person, who was very actively involved in with advise the government or something like that. And of course, your interviewee is also, she's worked with CERN and so on, so she's very qualified. And then I was nominated, and I have done work on human trafficking and so on. So I was qualified. So all three of us were qualified. Before leaving, I flew all the way to London for that, and I knew that if I lost, I would have a horrible experience. I was flying in on Thursday. The ceremony, Thursday afternoon, my flight landed. Thursday evening was the ceremony, and I was flying back on Sunday. And I knew that if I lost, I would be, and I won. But I knew that if I lost, then I would feel really bad. And I knew this about myself, so I didn't hide. Before I left, I was very clear in my mind that what are the possibilities and how do I think I will manage and handle. And so, I was very clear in my mind. I was like, all three of us are very good. In my mind, that was very clear. I read it. I was like, I'm not going to deny that, of course, I'm seeing like ups and downs in everyone's profile. This is why if she wins, this is why she would win. If I win, this is why I would win. And so I was hypothesizing about that. Of course, I don't know. But I was hypothesizing. But in my mind, I was trying to justify. And I know myself well enough to know that I was unconsciously, but once you know yourself, it becomes conscious and you can prevent. Which is that I was trying to obviously push my own advantages a little bit higher than the other candidates' advantages. But then I stopped. I was like, you know what? We all have pros and cons. We should not try to quantify it. We all have reasons why we could win. We all have reasons why we could lose. And one person is going to win. So let's go there. If we lose, we lose. It's going to be a valuable experience. And you need to lose once in a while. And I had thought to myself that I'm such an underdog in everything I do, that I'm probably not going to win. I'm the bride's groom, but not the groom, or something, whatever I call them. The best man, but not the groom. So I was like always the bridesmaid, never the bride, right? Like I think that thing makes a lot more sense, I'm always the bridesmaid, not the bride. I'm an eternal underdog. It's a big part of my life. I'm an underdog.
I was going to say, why? Really? I actually wouldn't have. Yeah.
That's why I love being in America. America is really an underdog culture. Americans love underdogs. I think there was one, if I could pinpoint the one thing that Americans love, it's underdogs. Everyone here in America, they love underdogs. They love underdog stories. They love a good comeback story. Nowhere else in the world do people love a good comeback story than here in the US. So people love the comeback story. They love underdog. I mean, I don't think I have a comeback story. I so far I've done well. But so I don't have a comeback story, but I'm an eternal underdog. I have never been favored my whole life. So this is a lesson you should know. My whole life, I was never the favorite. I was never the first choice. In school, I was never the first choice for a leadership position. I never got any leadership position. I was not anyone's best friend. I was not, usually in many cases, I was not the winner. I would always come second, third. Sometimes the interesting thing is when the external person would come, I would be the winner. So I remember like a case in point when I was in 7th grade, I participated in the so-called talent contest and I played the piano. I had played in the talent contest every single year. I would always be in the second position, the third position. I never won. Then in my 7th grade, they had the external judge. Not only did they have the external judge, but they actually clubbed together the entire 6th to 10th grade or 9th grade or something. They had like one talent contest for the first time and they called the external judge. Well, not only did I win that year, but then at the end of it, they have the special award category, which is like talent of the day or something like that, which is like across the singing, the piano, the dance, all of that. There is one person they select that is the talent of the day, and that was me. So later on, I went and asked the person. Everyone was shocked. All the teachers were shocked. Everyone was shocked. Why? Like, who selected this guy? Like, why did this select? Later on, I went and talked to the person, a professional musician. It was like, I heard you, and in my mind, there was no other choice. Like, it was very clear to me that you had the X factor. I always remembered that. I don't care about the award, obviously, it was a local school award, but I always remembered that it reminded me that there will be many losses. I internalized that. I couldn't articulate it, but I internalized that I'm going to lose many times before I get to win. And that was the time in my life where I internalized it, although I didn't realize it, and it has always been like that. I have had many losses. Like before I won this award, there were many cases where I was nominated. There were 4 or 5 situations. In fact, the irony is I won this award. I land back in the US, and then 3 days later, I hear back on another award where I lost. And so for every like 5 losses, I get nominated. I hit the top 3. I hit the top 2, and then I lose. And so there's something that just people get this uncanny feeling where they might feel like maybe I'm too different or I'm too rebellious. But there's something uncanny about the way I do things. That is what I've been told. That it's very polarizing. Like some people love it and they're like, you're it, you're my choice. And there are other people who are like, it's too uncanny, too different, too weird for me. So yeah, I think that's something to remember too. That you might polarize people, and it's okay. No one remembers the losses. The one thing that I would tell you also from my PhD days is that I remember there was a very famous heart surgeon. She came to give a guest lecture. I went to the guest lecture. She was the president of the American Medical Association or something like that. One of the first women, if not the first woman, very accomplished. And I don't remember anything about her talk. But I remember the one thing she said, which has stayed with me, and I say it to everyone. I'm like, always remember it. I am like, now she said two things. One was go after the big ideas. But it didn't really stick out so much because I feel like other people have said that too. But I've kind of understood more and more what she meant by that. That go after the big ideas, even though they are risky. That's what she really meant to say. That even though there's a 10% probability that you'll succeed in a big idea, it's okay. You'll fail 10 times. But if you're right, you'll succeed that one time, and that's all that matters. You might as well succeed once on a really big idea than succeed on 10 mediocre or good ideas that are not going to count for anything in the long run. So that's one thing. But then she said something else which follows into this first thing. I didn't connect it initially, but now I connected very clearly. The second thing she said is, it's the wins that will be there on your profile, in your mind, in people's minds. No one knows what you lost. If you lost 9 awards, like, who knows about that? The nominating committee knows. I mean, no one else knows. You're not going to put it on LinkedIn. You're not going to put it on your CV. You're not going to talk to people about your losses. You lost. Fine, move on. There'll be another chance. You're not going to put your 9 losses on your CV, but you will put your win. So what would you rather have? That you have a perfect record, you don't lose and you don't win, and you don't have anything? Or that you have mediocre things, you have a 90% win rate, but everything you have on your profile is mediocre. Well, it's local stuff, it doesn't count in the long run. Or you actually have the guts and the confidence to try for 10 things, knowing full well that you will only win once, and that also you might not win. Takes confidence. Takes confidence to fly out, knowing that you might lose and you will be suffering a jet lag flight back. You came on a jet lag flight, you lost, but that's the reason I did it. I was like, you know what, if I really am confident, I'm not going to be afraid of doing this. I don't know. I mean, one part of me was like, maybe I should reach out and tell them, tell IIT that, hey, can I know the outcome? Because if I don't win, then maybe my university will not allow me to go. I mean, that was, of course, that would have been a lie. But I could have told them that, hey, I mean, I don't want to come up. I could have told them the truth and told them that, hey, if I don't win, it's like an expensive flight ticket. I don't want to come all the way, if I don't win. So I'll keep it a secret. But can you let me know what the outcome is? Because the flight is so expensive and it's a really busy semester. And it's like, I can only come for 2-3 days anyways. And I teach on Monday, Wednesday. So I would have to fly out Wednesday evening, which is what I did. And then I would have to come back on Sunday. And that's a really busy trip. So I could have told them that. But I ultimately decided that and this is where self-awareness comes in. What's the real reason? Is it really the flight ticket? No, I have enough funding to pay for that. And the university does not have a problem if I fly out and I lose. They really don't. They would want me to go there and to socialize and to be there. They have no problem with it.
It's the feeling.
What's the real reason? The real reason is I'm afraid. I'm afraid that if I go out there and I lose, I'll feel really horrible. And I'm afraid of feeling bad. I'm afraid of knowing I'm not good enough. I'm afraid of knowing that I'm not one of the 3. I'm afraid of being an underdog. And so once you recognize that, you're like, you know what? What's the worst that will happen? You will lose, and you've lost many times before. And you have won many times before. It doesn't matter. It's just another thing. You have to go and face the music. And if you're confident, you'll face the music happily. And so I did that. And whether I would have won or not, it really didn't. At the end, that's not what I'm proud of. What I'm proud of is that I flew all the way and faced the music. That's what stands out, not the medal. The medal is not what matters.
It's momentary. You just...
It's immaterial. It's immaterial. I took the risk. Right? That stays with you. You take the risk and you become strong. You become strong. You become a little bit less fearless. It's always a work in progress. It's never binary. It's always a work in progress. On a different day, you will feel more afraid. On a different occasion, you will feel more afraid. And there's always some fear. There's always some doubt. And it's always a work in progress. But with every single time that you take such a risk and you face the music, you become a little bit less fearless and you become a little bit more confident, and that stays with you. So confidence is a work in progress. Confidence is always a work in progress. I'm very amused when I hear people say I'm very confident and this and that. I'm like, you might think you're more confident. That's what I'm thinking in my mind. But I really wonder how confident you would be that if your hand is placed close to the fire, like, would you still be that confident? Would you still be willing to face the music? Would you still be willing to accept that you lost and a better person won? And I know myself. I know for a fact that if I would have lost, I would have told myself that we came out here knowing that any one of us could win or lose. You didn't win. The other person won. They were better than you. Yes, there was uncertainty, but at the end of the day, there's a signal in that. And this is how I think. So when I lose something, when I get a rejection, I never tell myself I lost because it was bad luck. Even though sometimes it is. But I don't tell myself that I lost because of bad luck. When I win, I tell myself there was some good luck over here, that I was good, but there was also some good luck. So on the margin, everything was working for me on that day. I did well and I had good luck, and so I carried the day, and I recognize that that's the right way to do it. But when I don't win, I know in my mind intellectually that something went wrong. It may have been luck, but it might also have been that I was not good enough. So you can choose which direction to go. In my view, I think that if you say that, okay, I was not good enough on that day, and next time I will be good enough. I will try harder. That is a healthier thing to do. That's the healthier thing to do. So if you get a B or a C, you should tell yourself it's not the system, it's me, and I'm going to do better. That's the character building exercise.
Approach it with curiosity. Approach it with curiosity rather than questioning the worth. Am I worth it, or am I? Yeah, I completely agree. That is really, really valuable, actually, to with any aspect, actually. And I actually would like to ask 2 more questions, if that's okay. And are we good for time? If that's okay.
Good. Let's do 2 questions and then we'll end on that note.
Brilliant. Okay. So first question among the 2 is, where do you see yourself in the future?
Oh my God.
Because wait, they were going to
In what sense? Let me ask
Where do you
this.
see your
In what sense do you mean that?
Okay, where do you see yourself in terms of your research that you're doing now? Where do you look to take it? What the goal is, the outcome?
I can answer that. I can definitely answer that. So, I work on AI and social good and network science, and there are some specific fields I work in. A lot of it has to do with artificial intelligence and so on, but, that's kind of the technical side of it. That's not, I don't think that's the answer you're looking for. I think that the answer that I can give you, that is the genuine answer. I want to work on bigger problems. I really do. I feel like there are some problems I've worked on that are big, one of which is human trafficking. And there's another paper, we are just about to submit a paper in a couple of days that is going to be on the elections, on campaign finance. So we did a very rigorous study where we looked at publicly available data on campaign finance data, which is publicly available by the Federal Election Commission here in the US, that which campaign received what money and who did they give it to. And so, and I don't think it's available. Like if you as an individual give money to a candidate, that won't be available. That's my understanding. But the amount of money that the candidate received, and if the candidate is giving money to other candidates through their committees and their, it's a complicated apparatus. But basically, the candidates in a party, or they can give money to one another. So let's say if I belong to the Democratic Party and I raise a lot of money, I can give some of that money to other candidates. But it can't be done in secret. There are transactions in the FEC database that will record that. So we actually use all that data. My student did that. We built networks and we tried to, and so I won't go into the study, but my point is that we did this really interesting study on campaign finance. We discovered some really interesting things, and we are planning to submit it to one of the best journals in the world in a couple of days. Again, we are taking a risk with that. Maybe it will not, it's very prestigious journal. They may not even send it for peer review. When you send these things to these prestigious journals, there's a 2-step process. First, they have to decide whether they will even send it for peer review. They might refuse to send for peer review and just do a desk project. They are within their rights to do that. They would then just tell you, look, we're not interested. We don't feel this is important enough. They don't say it like that, but that's what the meaning is. What they are really telling you between the lines of that polite letter is that, look, we're not judging your scientific merit. We just feel like this is not impactful enough or important enough or general enough for our journal. right? It's too niche, it's too esoteric, and it's a judgment call, and you can't argue against it. If they give you that, they give you that, and you have to try somewhere else. And you get that in 2 weeks usually. When you submit in 2 weeks, they will tell you, are they sending it on or is it a desk project? If they send it on, then you have to wait for the peer reviews to come back. There will be 3 or 4 of those. And then based on the peer reviews, you might still get rejected, but you will find out a few months later. Or they might ask you to revise, and they will say, okay, if you revise it, we'll accept it. Or they'll accept, which is very rare. Typically, it's revise with accept. That's the best outcome that you can hope for. But this is a months-long process. So we are taking a risk. If we want, we can send it to a journal that is good, but not the best. And we know the paper will get published in a journal that is very good, but not the best. Right. So by going for the very best, we are exhibiting confidence in our work. We believe it is meant for the best journal. And I am trying to teach my students that. Right? So my student is a first-year student. She is just about to come into a PhD. She is a master's student. And I want to show her from the very beginning that you must try for big ideas and you must aim for the best. If you feel like your work is deserving of the best, then put your money where your mouth is. Take the risk. Don't just say it. Right? Take the risk. If you don't take the risk, you don't believe it. That is the bottom line. I do believe that very strongly. So she is now excited about this work, and she's kind of following my lead in a way on this. But we will submit to that, and we want to start doing more of that. Because the truth is, every piece of work we do is not meant for the best journal, and we are self-aware enough to recognize that. Out of every 5 pieces of work, 10 pieces of work that we do, I would say that out of every 10 papers that I write, maybe there is one out of 10 or 1 out of 20 even, that is meant for the best journal, that has a chance in the best journal even. And the other 19, there's a minimum level of quality that we adhere to, and it must go into a good venue, maybe a very good venue, but not really meant for the very best venue. So I'm not saying that everything we write has to go into the best venue, but I want to bring that ratio from, let's say, 10 to 1 or 15 to 1 to, let's say, 6 to 1. That would kind of be, and then eventually maybe 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. So that's how I look at it. That's where I see myself in the future, to go from a 10 to 1, where if we are writing 10 very good papers, 1 is meant for the best venue. We want to move that to 5 to 1, where out of 5 papers we're writing, 4 will get into very good places and 1 has a chance in the best place.
Right. Thank you for that. That's very interesting. Yeah. So the quality, I suppose, of what the quality doesn't, I guess, where I assume you associate the where it's the paper is seen is I don't know. Do you still consider the success of the paper?
So you just hit upon something important. So there is no doubt that when I say that there is a chance, right? The reason why I use the word there is a chance is because it means that there's a chance you will get published there, but it's not 100%. So you could have a bad day. And it could be that a peer reviewer has a major problem with what you've written, and they place such strong arguments that the other reviewers don't want to argue. They might just be like, you know what? I mean, if this reviewer feels so strongly about this, then maybe they're right and we should not accept it. You have a bad day. Again, you cannot use imperfect signal as an excuse.
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot use the fact that signals are imperfect cannot be used as an excuse. That's why we have to do things on average. On average, you have to do these things. So if you believe that, okay, if I believe that this is meant for the best venue, but I'm self-aware enough to recognize that maybe I'm biased, and when I see there's a chance that this will get into the best venue, that in reality it's both an imperfect signal, so there could be a luck factor, but also or I might be ahead of the times. Or my forecast is wrong and I'm overestimating the quality of the work. And so maybe there's a 65% chance. So when I think there is a chance, there's actually a 65% chance that will make it into the best venue. Well, what does that mean, right? What that really means is that in reality, you will need to produce 2 such works out of every 5 works. And then on average, one of those 2 works that you think is important, but you don't know which one, that is really, when I say important, I mean all of them are important, but I really mean the best, right? So really the best, the number one, like Nature, right? So even publishing one paper in Nature for a lot of people is career making. So there are lots of people who just can get one paper in Nature that is career making. In some fields, not every field. In biology and chemistry, for example, when more than one, definitely I would say for the very best academics. But I would say in computer science and social science, and so on, it's like one or two papers in science or nature could be career making. For many academics, it's like winning a major award. There are academics who would rather give up an award to get published in Nature if they got the choice. I know there are such people. So it's like winning an award to get a paper, and it's not that it's not like getting a grade. Getting published in Nature really is a mark of very high quality. You can't just get published. It's not a lottery. It's not someone sitting in a room and grading your exam. It doesn't work like that. There are top-notch peer reviewers who are grading your work, and the impact factor speaks for itself. The citations that Nature papers get speak for themselves. No one is forcing anyone to do all of that. It's natural. It's a natural thing. It is a sign of high quality. They have stood the test of time. You can't have it both ways. They have stood the test of time. That's the reality. And so just because you're not getting published in them, you can't demean those places and say that, this and that. So they are very high quality venues. These awards are very high quality. You may or may not win. There's a probabilistic element to it. It's not perfect. Every signal is imperfect. That is because at the margin, we have uncertainty. At the margin, there is always uncertainty. It is never clear-cut. Only students think in those terms. What I've learned is students want certainty. It's a sign of inexperience.
Yeah.
To want certainty is a sign of inexperience. To anticipate that there is ambiguity, there's uncertainty, and at the margin especially, is to accept the reality of the world, which is a sign of experience, and the reality of nature. So there's always ambiguity. There is always bad luck. There's always good luck. There's always uncertainty. The question here is that there's no reason for you to believe that luck is against you or for you. If it can go either way, which is the right thing that's the rational thing to believe. Why is something against you or for you? You might lose this time, but then you'll win the next time. So if you're consistently producing works of high quality, then you will settle at the natural rate. The natural rate is, on average, you will settle at the natural rate. There is no other way around it. Right? So you will settle at the natural rate. And if the natural rate is much lower than what you would like it to be, then the conclusion is inescapable, which is that barring some exceptional situation, you're overestimating your abilities. That is the likely reason. And unless you have evidence to the contrary, you have to go with the likely reason. So
and that's
these are hard truths. These are hard truths, but they are true. And the thing is that the world is not going to change itself, right? So
for
people
you,
who don't accept these things, they suffer. People who don't accept these things, they suffer because they are sitting in the corner, they are sitting on the armchair, they shy away into the corner with a sense of victimization, with a sense of, woe to me, right? Like, world should feel sorry for me because I was the next great thing that should have happened and no one recognizes my talents and everything against me. Well, sure, you can feel that way all you want, right? I mean, who cares? People have other better things to do. So, no one really cares at the end of the day. People will feel sorry for you, but is that really what you want, right? You want people to feel sorry for you. I don't think anyone wants people to feel sorry for them. You want people to respect them, to admire them, to see their courage, to see their risk-taking, and the risk in everything. So what I would tell you is that that's what I want to do in the future. I want to take bigger risks. And I want to improve the quality and I want to take bigger risks. I'm not happy with the status quo. I think the status quo is very good. According to many of my peers, and I'm winning awards and all of that, it's not good enough for me. So I want better. I want bigger. So that's what I'm aiming for. And I'm perfectly happy to take the risk. I know it will take bigger risks. And I'm ready, willing, and able to take the bigger risks. So now I just need to execute it. Right? So the question really is that over the next few years, will I follow through and take the bigger risks consciously, because it's resource allocation problem. If you work on this, you can't work on this. So that's the risk over here, that if we work on this, we can't work on this. But I also want to say that, I don't want to overestimate the risk, because the truth is that if we aim for higher quality work, and then the work does not make it into the very number one, like I said, let's say there are two papers, you put both, maybe one, you think both should make it. let's say one of them does, because you're uncertain and you might be overestimating. So let's say one of them makes it, the other one doesn't on average. Well, the one that didn't make it, you can then put it in the next best place. Or you can put it in a very good place still. And if you're right and it has merit, then it will still pick up the citations. So you have another chance, right? So it's not really such a big risk as one might think. So there is all the reason, there is all the incentive in the world to take the risk.
Yeah.
Right? So,
It's a brilliant answer. And I would like to ask for the last question. And I feel like if you're open to this as well, we could have a chat another time, because I have a ton of questions, but I'm cautious of time. So what I guess, as a very easy question for the last question, what is the meaning of your life?
Oh, such an easy question, right? Well, I
Easiest
suspect
for
the
last.
answer might change later on. As I grow older, I'm still very young myself, but I think that if I had to point to what's the meaning of life, I mean, there's a personal side to it. And of course, I want to make sure that I make the right personal decisions, that when the moments are here, and those moments don't come announced, I think there are moments in your life when you have to support someone, when you have to be there for someone, when you have to make the right decision, the courageous decisions. I hope that certainly, when I look back, that when those moments came, I certainly hope that I will have made the right decision. And on the occasion when I didn't make the right decision, I recognized it and I tried to correct it and learn from it. And didn't just get into this thing that whatever I'm doing is the right decision. So and I hope that I have enough self-awareness that I will be able to judge that I will know that, I will know myself, I will know my feelings, and I will know when I did something wrong, and when I know I did something right. And you have to know yourself. You have to be very open to your own emotional landscape and not close yourself off. And your inner self will tell you when something is wrong, I think. So there's the personal side of it. So that part is more personal. But on the professional side, I interpret professional broadly here. Anything to do with study, with achievements, with career, with some of which some people consider those things to be personal. But I'm saying that everything outside of, let's say, family or friendships and so on, I'm just, classing it as professional, whether it's education, whether it's starting a company, whether it's whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. I just want to, the thing that I really want to, that will give meaning, that I will be proud of when I look back, is that I did take the risks that felt right in that moment, that were the right risks to take, and that were genuine risks. I wouldn't know in advance whether, and that's what I mean by genuine risk, that you genuinely don't know, and maybe no one does, whether it will work out or not. And even more genuine risk is that if it doesn't work out, then you might be in a more difficult situation, and you shouldn't be reckless. So that I don't want to be reckless.
Yes.
I don't want to put everything on the line and gamble everything away, but I think those are dramatized situations. I don't plan on doing anything like that. But my point here is that sometimes in life you do take big risks, like a career shift, and it may not work out. And then you might be in a harder situation than you were before. But I would say that's not reckless. That is something that maybe needs to be done, because there's a chance it will work out. And either way, maybe the first thing wouldn't have worked out anyways. So I hope that I take the risks and pursue the ambitions and aim for the achievements that are not just things that I can safely get, but that I believe I can, that are a reach for me, but that I do believe that I can get, and there's a risk. There might be a 1% chance of getting it, but there's a 1% chance of pretty much everyone getting it. So am I willing to put myself on the line and be one of the 100? Right? And everyone is equally good, and face the fact that there's a 1% chance or a 2% chance at best that I could get this. But if I get this, then, I've fulfilled my goal. And if I don't get this, then I won't regret it. I know that, okay, I tried. I put myself out there, and it's kind of like taking the risk, like that small example. That maybe is the meaning of life. Maybe that trip, that flight to London and back, I think is a microcosm of what would make life meaningful for me. That I took it. I took the genuine risk. And that's a very small example. but you can blow up the example. And I hope that I will be able to do that. And so that by the time I get to the end, I look back and I can see for myself that I did that. In the moments when those moments arose, I didn't shy away. I pursued those moments. Because a lot of times they don't come to you. You have to pursue it. You need to get someone to nominate you for the award. You need to submit the paper. You need to be proactive. It doesn't come to you. It's not a lottery. You have to try for it proactively, and then you're putting yourself on the line. That's really what I mean, right? That you're proactively trying. You're putting your heart and soul into it, and suffering the risk of losing while you're putting your heart and soul into it. So to me, doing that, being courageous enough to do that time after time, is what would make life meaningful. So that's I know if I do it, I will be happy. As I said, I've seen that for myself. Whenever I've done that, I've had moments when I've lost and I've had moments when I've won. The loss didn't feel good, but over time, I was very happy I did it. The loss didn't stick in my mind. So I've written proposals, spent my heart and soul into it, could have done other things. The proposal didn't come through. I know it's not personal. I know that everyone in the US, all the top universities, even international universities could be submitting that proposal. Someone has to get funded and someone doesn't get funded. And I've won proposals and I've lost proposals. And so I know not to take it personally. In the moment, you know that you will take it personally. That's okay. It will pass. Over time, what stood out was not that I lost or even that, or in other cases that I won, but that I was willing to put my heart and soul into it. The fact that I was able to risk putting my heart and soul into it, despite not being at all certain of the outcome and knowing intellectually that there was only a 10% chance, a 5% chance, and still putting my heart and soul into it. That gives meaning to your life, I think. That gives meaning to your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a very elaborate and very, really, this is, I can't, this, I think this, to me, this, altogether, has been, I don't know, it's been so how should I say, such an invaluable experience to me in terms of expanding my just conversation wise, and it's just it's been what an experience. I mean, I have so many other questions, but I think we should leave it for another time. I wanted to say I'm impressed.
For you and my student on the campaign finance, I think is waiting for me to come back to her. So, I know it's late for you also. So no, it's been a great conversation. I do want to wish you well on your journey. I think this is a very important journey, maybe the most important. And I think if I may, I think that when you're in school, we often don't, if there's one regret that I do have, a partial regret from my undergrad days, it's that I didn't make use of all the opportunities. And so I think that you're doing better than I did because you're doing these podcasts and you're doing other things. And I think that's wonderful. And so I would just encourage you to keep doing that. Keep making use of the opportunities. Don't be afraid of failing. Everyone says that, but hopefully you kind of sort of, maybe I've given a little bit more insight on what that means. That, I am saying that you will be afraid of failing. Everyone is. You still have to go through with it. And the more you go through with it, the less afraid you will become. That's kind of what makes everything meaningful. So make use of all your opportunities, don't be afraid of thinking outside the box. The world is changing very quickly. I mean, there are fields I'm working in right now that I had no training in. You're my PhD. I did my PhD in computer science, even though my degree was not in computer science. I am now in yet another department. So my faculty is in a department that is not computer science and not my undergrad degree. So the world is changing, these things change, they shift around, and you don't know what's going to happen, what the world will look like 5 years from now, what the norms will be 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But the fundamentals are what will remain. So you have to build that rock solid foundation, the fundamentals, and you'll navigate. You'll figure it out. You'll get the pulse, and you'll be able to navigate the river. But you have to stay grounded in the fundamentals. So focus on the fundamentals. Know yourself, take risks, make use of the opportunities, and lean into your strengths. Mitigate your weaknesses, but lean into your strengths. The strengths are what will matter at the margin. So you said, how can I know? I have so many options. You can know by asking yourself, what is it that I'm really strong in, and what is it that I really feel good about? You might not be strong in it today, but if you feel really good about something, you will become the strongest in it tomorrow, because you will have a natural incentive to become the best at it. And most likely you will be able to do original work in it. If you really love something, you will be able to do original work in it, which is the ultimate sign of greatness. It's not emulative. It's the ultimate sign of greatness if you can do original work in something. And for that, you have to love it. So that's how you can know where to focus your energies. What makes you feel good. Yeah.
Wow. What a brilliant advice. Oh my gosh, yeah. It's what a fascinating perspective, actually. I love these conversations. It's just widening my perspective on everything. And I think likewise the audience will as well, which I'm currently still trying to build, who's open to these sort of conversations as well, and my university and beyond as well. I can only say it's been such a pleasure, such a privilege to be able to talk and use these platforms, use technology once again to be able to communicate and beyond my circle and bubble of my outside of my circle. So I really appreciate it, and I would love to have a conversation some other time as well, whenever in the future with you.
When you're 2 years in, we should redo this, and I'm going to ask you how what your experience was like. I think you have some fun stories to share, after you've gone through a few semesters. So that's going to be fun. I love hearing your stories.
True.
But
all right,
with that, you have a good night. Good luck. And no, thank you for reaching out, and I hope I was useful. But yes, good luck with everything, and I look forward to following you and your journey.
Thank you so much. Likewise. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.